Hello and welcome to the Festival of Pineapples, the live judging of the Pineapple Awards. This is an awards program that seeks to recognize built environment projects and initiatives that make a positive social impact on the wider place and the people. So this is the judging of the category Community Engagement. My name is Christine Murray. I'm co-founder of the Pineapples and founding editor-chief of the developer and the director of the Festival of Place, and I'm your chair for this category. So this Pineapple seeks to recognize excellence in community engagement. The judges will be asked to consider how the initiative connected with key stakeholders and citizens, and whether their feedback was meaningfully incorporated into decision-making. We have some great finalists to share with you. A reminder of the rules: each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, who will then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide on the winner, and the winners will be announced at the awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London, and the tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of finalists, not just winners, and all of them from the shortlist, are also invited to present their project on stage at this summer's Festival of Place on the 10th of June at Box Park Wembley in London. The chairs always make suggestions, and we pick them across the categories to make this a thrilling day of content. So passes to the festival are also on sale now. Please feel free to use the emoji button below to cheer the presenters on, but the judges are the only ones who ask the questions at the Pineapples. If you would like to make the slides bigger, sometimes they look on a smaller scale on some laptops, there is a maximize or pop-out button top right, and you can enable full screen mode to watch. So it's time to meet our judges for this category. They'll be joining us a bit later with their questions. Today we've got with us Chloe McFarlane, Community Engagement Manager at Grosvenor Property UK. Chloe supports initiatives that deliver Grosvenor's people positive strategy, focusing on increasing community well-being, building sector diversity, and targeting philanthropy. These programs include fostering inclusion among residents and workers, improving access to green spaces, particularly for young people, and supporting student outreach to diversify the built environment sector. Chloe also manages the volunteering program that promotes employee engagement and strengthens charity partnerships, helping deliver positive impact in the places that Grosvenor is active. Gemma Hollyoak is with us, Development Manager for Hackney Council. Gemma recently joined the London Borough of Hackney. In her prior role at Town as a development manager, she worked across a number of projects, including Angel Yard and co-housing Upon Time. In her previous role at Community-Led Housing London, she worked with community groups at an early stage and supported them in pursuing deliverable projects that met their objectives. Gemma's background is in architecture. She graduated with a postgraduate Master's of Architecture from Central St. Martin's in 2018, and has worked on custom-built, community-led, and large-scale residential projects. We also have Christopher Arthey, a longtime Pineapples judge. He is a director of Axiom Developments. Christopher is a planning and development surveyor and a director of Axiom Developments, a land promotion and project development company. Axiom collaborate with landowner partners to unlock land value and promote sustainable mixed-use development schemes through the local plan process to allocation and planning consent. And finally, we've got Elaine Cresswell with us, who is director of Reshaped. Elaine is an enthusiastic chartered landscape architect, sustainability and engagement specialist, and director of Reshaped. Elaine is a member of the Design Council, Places Matter, Cheshire West, and Chester Design Review panel, and the Landscape Institute representative on the Building with Nature Advisory Board. Over her career, Elaine has purposefully specialized in the creation of well-designed, sustainable places that are of meaning to people. She's won many awards, and her involvement in high-profile projects such as the regeneration of places in Wakefield and beyond. So it's now time to hear from our first project. We're now going to hear from Finchley Lakeside, Squires Lane in the London Borough of Barnet for Pentland Group with JTP and 2 to 3 Degrees. And this is going to be presented by Nigel Bidwell, partner at JTP, and Katie Grenier, creative director at the Pentland Group. They'll be joining me shortly. I have their presentation here. Hi, Nigel. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear us clearly?
You sound great, and I see your presentation. So over to you. I'll be back in 10 minutes.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, many of you may not know Pentland, but you will definitely know the names behind some of our brands. We're a fourth generation family business that started in 1932, and we've been on the site in Finchley since 1984, when we bought it off the electricity board. We even had the pleasure of having Margaret Thatcher cut our ribbon as she was MP for Barnet and Finchley. In the late 90s, we bought all associated land and developed an award-winning campus in 2000, which won the British Council of Office Awards. We had amazing inter-brand ecosystem with swimming pool, tennis courts, five-a-side, the lake that literally we did rowing competitions on, and we absolutely loved our life in Finchley. Then COVID struck. A site that had 600 people then went to 110, and we were rattling around in the building. We then moved to Farringdon in 2004, and we own the land and the site, and we wanted to make sure that we had a legacy for our neighbours, because we've been so integral to the community there, being part of the carnival, being part of the all cultural activities, and our legacy there is really important to us, and our neighbours and our friends and our reputation that we leave there. Currently, the site is being used for filming Gangs of London currently, but we want to make sure that we have a site that absolutely is integral to our community and our values. Over to you, Nigel.
And so Katie's brief to us was very clear. She wanted us to engage with local people to really shape the future of the site. And so we came up with a bespoke process. There were 3 stages, really. The first one was getting to know people and understanding the site and its surroundings. And this included data and visits to local organizations and businesses, but it was also about reaching out to people, local experts that could help us with our understanding and start to embrace the process with them. So we met with the Finchley Society and their archivist, and they really began to tell us about the history of the site, but also what made Finchley Central the place it was, whether that was connections from the church to local gentry, etc. So really getting an understanding of the site and community. The next stage 2, was about connecting with people. So a launch event to really spread the word, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the really core process was about setting up a youth panel with 2 to 3 degrees, and then a series of co-design days, which allowed us to work with local people to come to a particular vision. These strands came together during the report back process, and we sort of created a consensus vision for the site as such, and that concluded stage 2. Stage 3 is really important in terms of where we are in the process. So we are soon to look to sort of attract a development partner and really start the planning process. So we need to set Pentland's legacy and vision in place before we attract a partner. And then we also have appointed specialists in terms of setting up things like community trusts, and Katie will talk more about that in a minute. But going back to understanding who is actually there in the local community, we did 2 things here: the use of data, but also spending time on the ground as well. And the data is interesting. We use a lot of GIS-based data sources, lots of different criteria, and we would look at within a mile in the borough of Barnet itself and across London to actually understand the differences between the site and its surroundings, but also really understand what was unique about this place. And one of the things that was of interest to us was there were a higher number of entrepreneurs and small business owners in the borough compared to across London. And that made us sort of tailor our approach for actually going out and speaking to people, but also we'd have in the back of our mind the potential for this as a potential ground floor use, for example. The second aspect was about spending time in the community. So we looked to understand, interested groups that were there, but importantly went to see them. So went to see them in their environments, to ask about their interests, but also to ask about who should we be speaking to. So really using their network to understand who should be spoken to as part of this process of advertising the process. So we really, we hadn't started any design at this point. It was really a case of actually getting the message out there that there would be a process. Oh, apologies, we've just jumped. Let me go back.
Yeah, you're on the right side.
Thank you. And then tied into that was really about increasing our reach. And we did these in a couple of different ways. As you can imagine, there's lots of traditional techniques that we use in terms of flyering, setting up a website, and they're fine. But actually, we are conscious of actually trying to attract a younger group of people to be part of the conversation and part of the process as well. So we use a lot of Instagram as such to reach a younger demographic, and you can see the example on the screen. We use our younger members of the design team to also connect with younger people in the local community, but also we have an interactive map platform that we've set up here at JTP to allow people to comment at any time, saying what they like about the site and what they don't as well. Tied into that was the idea of a launch event as well. So we encouraged people to come to the site. So whether that's councillors or societies, local interest groups as well. And this was really about advertising the event and the process, allowing them to come onto a site that they haven't been onto before, and really getting them to advertise the process and connect their network with the process as well. But as you can see in terms of the photos, there's a range of people in the community, but we were very conscious that we needed to reach out to local people, local young people as well.
I think, yeah, that's it. The engagement with 2 to 3 degrees was incredible. And I'm just going to read out the aims of 2 to 3 degrees. It aims to inspire and equip young people with personal development skills needed to fulfill their potential. We employed 7 young people, ages 17 to 21, and they have a diverse heritage and background, which really represents our community and our local area. We shared all our careers and how we work and our brands, and JTP also shared what they did. And we had people in from our planning group as well that actually said to them and inspired them about what this site could be. We heard the voices of our young local people, and that for us was amazing. For 6 weeks, every Monday on site in Finchley, we had a night of creativity, fun, ideation, and dreaming big, fueled by pizza and snacks. What more could you want? Can we go to the next slide, Nigel? So the positive outcomes, they were invaluable youth consultants. For the redevelopment of our site, they were challenged by what could make this site absolutely unique for all ages, genders and ethnicities. And they did it amazingly well, considering never of them had thought about planning, thought about a site, didn't even know the site existed, and yet it was only like meters from their houses. They actively contributed to our site and what we have now put into our planning documents. They also came to our community event, which was brilliant because it meant that they were actively involved and cared about what happened to this site. We heard their ambitions and their dreams. They designed maquettes outside of water features and athletic running tracks, and they actually created a market of cultural food so that it actually centered around all different ethnicities and cultures that are in the borough. It really did cement our diversity of our community, and also how we want to move forward. And they were integral to all our planning and all our dreams.
And so running alongside that process as well were co-design days that took place on site. And we wanted to make these as easy as possible for people to take part in the process. Interestingly, because the site's really fascinating history, being vineyards and power stations and then Pentland, people had never been to the site at all. So it's very difficult to ask people, what do you think should happen on this site, when they hadn't actually understood it or had the ability to walk on the site. So what started with us was a series of site tours, a number of sort of guided tours around the site during the course of the 2 days, and encourage people to understand more about the assets and issues of the site. We then undertook a sort of workshop process with people, understanding, their worries and concerns about change, but also their dreams and thinking about the opportunities for the site. And that's incredibly useful for us, but actually more important for members of the community to hear other people's opinions as well, and actually debate some of those as well. So a really interesting forum. But the really exciting thing, I think, for me is actually sitting with people, actually drawing. And I think local people find that incredibly empowering, actually holding the pen, drawing their ideas, facilitated by the design team as well. And importantly for us, it's about local people presenting back the ideas. So it's not about me saying, these were the discussions on the table. It's actually about local people sharing their thoughts and other local people hearing those as well. And tied into that is recognizing that people have different amounts of time and different levels of involvement as well. So we've tried lots of different techniques here to get people that only have 10 minutes to come and write ideas on the wall or add paw prints, or using AI, so that actually working with young people to say, okay, well, here's a picture of the lake. What could this be? And having immediate responses in terms of design and visuals and things like that, all set in a very relaxed, comfortable environment with free coffee, but also things like kids toolkits, which encourage young people to get involved drawing, but also takes the pressure off parents to actually look after children while they're looking and engaging in the process as well. So really making it as easy as possible. And we were incredibly lucky. We had over 500 attendees across the public events. And we were really thankful for that, because this isn't a site that enjoys footfall as such. It's not on the high street. These people have given up their time to specifically come to the site and be part of the process as well. And also,
so Nigel, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because your 10 minutes is a little bit more than up. So I'm going to have to transfer to the others. But hopefully the judges can pick up some of your more comments or more detail that we've had to leave on the table in the Q&A. So I'm going to welcome the judges to the table, please, as they join me on stage, and invite them to put their questions to you. So I guess, Chloe, would you like to go first? Do you have a question for the team?
Yes, thank you, Christine. And Nigel and Katie, thank you both for the presentation. So my first question to you, in your application, you mentioned that a lot of entrepreneurs have expressed an interest in taking a long-term role on the site. Can you just tell me a little bit more about the mechanisms by which you're exploring this? I know you appointed the community stewardship solution, sorry, but it'd be great if you could just dive a little bit more into that to understand the nuances.
I think at the open days, we had so many people that came from the community that were already developing businesses and had a real aspiration to be on site. For example, Blue Garage in Lewisham, they're actually neighbours to the site, but they've got this amazing maker entrepreneurialism space in Lewisham. And we just thought, God, they're so amazing what they do. And we've been interacting and donating actually equipment from our brands to them now. We also had a wellness centre, again, that's multi-faith, that was on site that, again, really was interested. So we've been engaging with so many local people to make this the legacy happen, because it's really important to us that we leave a lasting legacy for the site, because it is a family business, and a lot of them are friends and neighbours, and we've been neighbours of them for, you know, since the 80s.
I think just to pick up on that in terms of the mechanism, it's one thing to have the process and develop a shared vision, but actually the really critical part, which is the stage 3, is how do you get that vision to stick? We are, like I say, attracting a development partner, but what's really important is in the sort of the nature of the sale, we will enshrine the Pentland legacy to ensure that a developer signs up to that process to therefore deliver it. And then secondly, we've appointed a consultant who is an expert in creating community trusts, so that there is a finance vehicle to obviously maintain things like landscape, but also they've undertaken, you know, financial reviews of those potential ground level occupiers to move the conversation on about their potential, you know, accommodation on site, and ensuring that that's a viable use moving forward to animate that ground level and make it local.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Elaine, can I bring you in?
Yes, thanks very much for your presentation. My question really is around connectivity, because most of your presentation was about bringing people to the site and activities that they could do on the site. So I was really interested to hear what the community wanted about incorporating the site as part of their everyday and part of their routes to and from work or nursery or school. And what have you actually managed to deliver as part of that kind of aspiration?
Yeah. Well, you know, interestingly, as I said before, the site has never been part of the surrounding area. It's been a sort of gated compound due to the number of uses on site. And it became apparent when we hosted people on the site and gave them tours of the site that there were opportunities to open up new entrances to allow not only people to come to the site, as you say, but actually move through the site as well. So there's an opportunity to open up a new route across the site that saves people that live to the south of the site probably about 7 minutes in terms of walking to the local tube station as well, and then cutting across the site to go to local parks as well. So it's very much part of the process, and people are really interested in the nature of those connections as well. We want pedestrian connections or cycle connections. And so from those conversations, we developed a strategy of keeping cars to the edges and really promoting a pedestrian route that fully engages with the lake, opening up all those assets as well. So it's a really important part of the scheme in terms of what could the scheme be itself, but actually what are the benefits to the surrounding area.
We had a wildlife charity in a couple of weeks ago, and kingfisher had been spotted on the site. And it is all of those connections with nature that you would see on your way to work or in your commute, or if you were just having wellness in the morning or being part of the cafe where you could connect with other people. I think when we hosted the days for the public, they were blown away by the site because it is so beautiful. And if anything, we want to make sure that beauty is seen by more, not less, because I've had the pleasure of working for Pentland for 30 years and have loved being on that site. And so it will be an absolute dream to make more people see how gorgeous the site is.
Thank you.
Gemma, can I pass to you?
Thank you both for a fantastic presentation. I was going to pick up on, I think it was around stage 2, you mentioned you kind of reached consensus on the site sort of brief. And I wanted to just, I guess my question is sort of twofold. That's quite a tricky thing to do when there are lots of conflicting opinions. So first, how did you navigate conflict within that group? And then secondly, there are sort of other factors beyond the design, so the feasibility of the project in terms of financial and legal. How were you able to kind of get in the nuts and bolts of the project so that you have a project that's, you know, it can go out to a development partner and be picked up? So yes, it's
Sure.
It's sort of twofold question, really.
I think the conflict point is really interesting. Our processes are very much allowing people to hear other people's opinion. And the co-design tables are fascinating because, some people say we need more parking on the site, and others will say, but it's all about green open space. So you need to have those conversations. And what we try to do is, obviously we had 1,000 insights that people provided with us. We do a lot of analysis, both in the qualitative but also quantitative. So we know that over 200 comments were about opening up the lake and things like that. And we play those back to people in terms of saying the majority of people felt these particular aspects as well. We use a lot of AI in terms of actually analysing that and all the data you can imagine that comes out of all those different inputs. In terms of the financials, we're very open with people in terms of understanding that, if you want these open green spaces and things like that, people need to pay for that. And so very much part of the process was saying this will be a new neighborhood where people will be living, and engaging people in those conversations about types of accommodation and the like. Behind the scenes, we obviously worked with people like CBRE in terms of testing viability as well, to ensure that we were getting the balance right of delivering these great opportunities at ground level and open space, but also ensuring that actually, because this is a private development, obviously not a council initiative as such, that actually that it was a viable proposition, testing different options, so that then when we go to market, which is likely in next month or so, that actually developers are attracted by the prospect, and there's sufficient, there's obviously sufficient returns and things like that to ensure that the vision actually is realised. Because what we didn't want to do was say we can do all these things, but actually, in this time and place at the moment, viability is absolutely key. So it'd be worse to promise things and then not be able to deliver. So, hand in hand with the process of conversation was one of testing, validating, and hopefully setting this off in the right direction in relation to a development partner. But I think it's important. Katie could have very easily said, okay, we've left the site, we're just going to sell it. But actually, this process is all about ensuring that legacy and finding the right development partner.
And our reputation as a business.
Christopher, can I bring you in?
Well, thank you both for your presentation, and thank you, Gemma, for taking asking the same question that I wanted to ask. But I will. I'll give you a slightly kind of maybe gentler one, which is kind of what has been kind of the biggest surprise for you through this process. You always have a few surprises when you're going through this journey. So what has jumped out and surprised you?
Do you want to go first? Yeah. Well, for me, do you want to? For me, I think it is. I think I took for granted how beautiful the site was, because I have been there a long time. I think the engagement with 2 to 3 degrees has been incredible, because we get to hear the people, the voices, the young voices, which are also our consumers, of how they would like the site to be and how they'd like to live and how they'd like to move forward in the future. I think that's also, but also how bonkers people are in the community, as well, because I've loved hearing all the crazy ideas. I've loved hearing all the aspirations of the site. The community day was insane for me, because, it was almost like they'd never had a peek into the kitchen before, and yet they were wandering around going, "Can you open the back gate now? It would save me 7 minutes to get to the tube station." I think our building is beautiful, and I'm still on site actually, so I still have the pleasure of going there like a couple of times a week. So I think what has surprised me is actually the general public's opinion of the site and the beauty it offers, and actually now how we can make sure that that legacy grows into our local residents and neighbours. And yeah, that's been my surprise.
I think for me, there were two. If you have conversations with local community, you're amazed who's actually out there and their abilities and interest and capability. And then the second one is really with the youth panel. It's easy being an architect to sort of, you deal with the day-to-day sort of things. Every Thursday evening when I knew I was going to go meet the panel, I was genuinely excited. And it gives you a real energy, and it gives the project a real drive. And so it's something that we've really sort of embraced and use across a number of projects now. And so I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did, but they were incredibly refreshing. And I think the final thing is just seeing how much they grew during that 6-week process. You know, they came in very tentative, but actually by the time they left, very, very keen to express their opinions. And they joined us at one of the community days as well, which was a really good way of joining everything up.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, such an inspiring story to hear about the young people panel. Thanks for sharing that with us and your enthusiasm, and the Kingfisher, which is the first one of the day for sure in this
They've been a last.
engagement category. Probably. All right. Well, it's time for us to travel to our next project. So thank you, judges, for your questions. And we are now going to make our way to Glasgow. So the next presentation is Livable Neighbourhoods, Tranche 3 in Glasgow for Glasgow City Council and Transport Scotland Sustrans with Arcadis and Collective Architecture. And this project is presented by Pippa Cook, Architectural Assistant, and Ross Aitchison, Architect and Urban Designer at Collective Architecture. Welcome both.
Morning. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. I'll leave you to your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Good morning, everyone. Glasgow's Livable Neighbourhoods programme is the city's approach to combining elements of the 20-minute neighbourhood concept with the place principle. This key policy programme emerged as an output of a citywide public conversation on Glasgow's transport future called Connecting Communities. And it sits within a broader range of work the city is delivering, including the rollout of its hugely successful city network, cycle infrastructure, and the city centre focused Avenues programme. Arcadis, our colleagues there, and Collective Architecture were appointed in March 2024 to deliver Tranche 3 of the programme, which covered 4 peripheral neighbourhoods, home to approximately 80,000 residents. These ranged from the suburban neighbourhoods of East Knightswood and Cardonald in the west, to the post-war estates of Milton and Easterhouse in the northeast, and they're all sited on the boundary of Scotland's largest local authority. Our work covered REBA stages 0 to 2, with a strong focus on engagement across both stages. These neighbourhoods are vast in scale and include some of Scotland's most economically and socially deprived communities. These are areas which have often seen extensive regeneration efforts over a number of decades, and they've had an associated consultation period across a number of years. A key output of the work, which was funded by Transport Scotland and Sustrans, was to identify local priorities, opportunities, and challenges across 4 livable neighbourhood themes: local town centres, spaces for people, everyday journeys, and active travel. Part of our role was to align these with Scotland's ambitious National Planning Policy, NPF4, and the Scottish Government's long-standing commitment to ending child poverty. Over a 12-month period, we undertook a thorough engagement process, which started by neighbourhood scoping and stakeholder mapping. This meant for us long walks covering the vast geographies of each of the 4 areas, meeting key community anchor organisations and establishing where sub-neighbourhoods were defined by local people. We then spent many hours working with those communities to find out what the key issues and priorities were for local people, and then mapping, testing, and sharing back our findings with communities in a continual feedback loop. Collective Architecture led the engagement activities, which covered 60 events across the 4 neighbourhoods. These activities encompassed workshops, on-street pop-ups, co-design sessions, community exhibitions, and a digital GIS portal for feedback, sharing, and data gathering, and it was all underpinned using Scotland's engagement tool, the Place Standard. To gather people's views and ideas, we used a variety of methods to be as open and accessible as possible. We utilised maps, comments cards, surveys, and a huge number of conversations. Our in-person events brought together 1,100 attendees from a broad range of backgrounds and demographics that were present in each place. We spoke to and recorded discussions with 106 stakeholder organisations from across the public, private, and third sectors. and our activity gathered over 1,600 items of written feedback, providing us with a rich seam of quantitative and qualitative data in digestible formats. In addition, our interactive GIS platform and floor maps gathered together more than 700 comments directly related to on-the-ground locations and specific issues. These went from minor things such as broken footpaths or fly tipping or overflowing gullies. These are all things which negatively impacted local accessibility and how people went about their everyday lives.
So a key driver of the activity was an ambition to give communities agency over their own places. From the outset, we identified and worked closely with the key anchor organisations in the heart of the communities, which helped us build trust and shape the ideas which emerged from the process. We worked in the spirit of reciprocity, trying to contribute towards community wealth building through using community-owned hire spaces and catering. So in Milton, we worked with a local food bank to host a community pizza night during the engagement event. At the Casey Pantry, we hosted after-school soup for the co-design, and in Easter House, we joined the Friday bingo at Platform Art. We're really proud to be part of a city that in 2022 became the UK's first feminist city, as it moved to embed a gender-sensitive approach in citywide planning policy. This has given urban planners like ourselves an incredible tool that we can use to shine a light on spatial inequity and explore issues around access and inclusivity with local groups in a more nuanced way. In September 25, we ran a workshop as part of the programme, which explored how feminist urbanism principles can be delivered meaningfully on the ground, inviting the community anchors and Glasgow City Council officers to share learning and best practice with Make Space for Girls, A Place in Childhood, and our Directorate Collective, Jude Barber, for the session. The livable neighbourhood principles are open enough to allow us to apply different lenses through the engagement, and this is one of its real strengths. In Glasgow, over a third of children are living in poverty, and this is rightly at the top of the agenda for the council administration. In order to best understand how poverty and spatial inclusion intersect, we worked with A Place in Childhood to run sessions in 6 schools across the 4 areas, developing a community charter for each, which underpinned the design development in stage 2. These included things such as outdoor social spaces, closer connections to nature, and safer formalised footpaths across well-used routes to school. Alongside these more specialist sessions, we created a co-design methodology and toolkit, which allowed us to work with community groups on developing the scope and brief of the project. The methodology established a clear set of themes drawn from the Livable Neighbourhoods Principles, MPF4, and the Council's key priorities to frame the session and ensuring outcomes continue to align with policy.
It was an important part of our process that we could identify quick wins through existing council activities and work streams. Often these were communities that could feel unheard or forgotten, and a key output and aspect of our work was showing that action could be undertaken. Whether this was highlighting where bins might need emptying more regularly or gullies might need cleared, these small things can make a big difference in engendering trust with the council, which bigger projects can then later build upon. Our stage 1 activities identified 184 emerging opportunities across the neighbourhoods. These were all mapped against the 4 themes and ranged from the macro to the micro, but each was given equal weighting and importance. These were then scored against a matrix developed by the council client, with quick wins drawn out and a total of 97 REBA stage 1 projects tested. These were selected and aligned beyond the livable neighbourhood themes to also include wider council priorities, for example, how the council enables a just transition, how we further the feminist town planning objectives, and how the city can meet its overarching mission to tackle child poverty. These projects were mapped and briefed into neighbourhood plans, and these plans support wider strategic planning within the council, for example, in the delivery of its city network. After a further round of scoring, 16 REBA Stage 2 projects were taken forward and developed to concept design stage, with each costed, interrogated, and made oven ready for future funding bids. These ranged from school streets to parks improvements, with one project in each neighbourhood covering an accessibility audit of a key street, with the necessary improvements drawn, detailed, and costed. All of our projects followed the thread of engagement. Our small, committed engagement team followed projects from the very first discussions through to being an integral part of the design team that developed stage 2 concept projects. On the ground, we were accountable and familiar to the communities we engaged with. We built trust, and we all felt the projects very personally. Our approach also acknowledged the difficulty of funding. It was important that we develop things that could be done by a variety of partners and through different mechanisms. These peripheral areas of the city have been widely engaged with over a long period of time. They don't have engagement fatigue, but they do sometimes feel disenfranchised by a lack of delivery. On the screen is just one example of a stage 2 project, which highlights all the potential partners that could help delivery, and also shows where smaller, cheaper changes could be made more quickly, whilst larger capital funding is gathered.
As Ross mentioned, the importance of a genuinely open process with accessible outputs allows the community to pick up things themselves, carrying the mantle, rather than feeling disempowered, waiting for the council to act on things. We're now collaborating with one local community council we met along the way, up in Craigend, who are now progressing projects in their area that were picked up through the engagement activity, working in partnership with themselves, the council, and through the Scottish Government Vacant and Derelict Land Fund, as well as the council's own participatory budgeting process. We're delivering small but meaningful improvements in the community, and this will now extend to include additional funding through the council's feminist town planning process. The power of livable neighbourhoods in its true commitment to community engagement and empowerment. It isn't solely about the individual projects, but creating a catalogue of things that communities actually want and know will make a difference. The key legacy is in bringing communities together, building consensus, celebrating difference, and fostering agency. Thank you, and we look forward to your questions.
Hi, just making my way back to you there. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was beautifully to time. So I'm going to welcome our judges back to the stage with their questions. It's great to see that Feminist City is making an impact already. We've got Holly Bruce coming to the Festival Place to talk about it this on 10th of June. So excited to hear more.
That's great.
Well, Gemma, would you like to go first this time?
Absolutely. Fantastic project, and thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, really great. I think one of the things I particularly enjoyed was those quick wins that you identified, and that they are so important. The question I was going to ask was, you identified the partners and delivery, and I thought that was really, really important. You have the co-design with the residents, but it sounds like you almost had a co-design process with the council and the delivery partners like alongside, and that is its own engagement stream. And I just wondered how you addressed the sort of power dynamic between people who had power to deliver, but maybe needs to come along that journey as well, and how those two almost, I'm seeing parallel work streams came together, and you let everybody in on that process.
I think it's often quite a challenging one. I think, you know, as you probably know quite well, Gemma, that the relationship between public and council can be quite tense at times. And I think these are areas, particularly those in the northeast of Glasgow, that have had so much engagement over such a sustained period of time, but often don't necessarily see outcomes. And I think there's a real recognition from the Glasgow City Council officers that can be true. And so there's a real commitment from our client and the Livable Neighbourhoods programme to try and bridge that gap. So, you know, that feminist town planning workshop that we hosted as a kind of extra event in our programme back in last year, that was part of that discussion, that we've got a very ambitious council policy in terms of what Holly Bruce has put forward. But how that translates on the ground is going to be really critical to what people see. So we did that in two parts, that session where we invited council officers from across departments. It wasn't just planners or transport planners, but from all sorts of different departments, to get them in a room together to actually interrogate what that might mean. But then we did a follow-on session in the afternoon where we actually brought the community anchor organisations into the space and said, what does this actually mean for you? And how do we bring those two bodies closer together so that the outcomes feel combined? So I suppose that's one example where we tried to do that. And I think we tried to be as open and honest with the community stakeholders as we could about that, you know, that some of these things are going to be really difficult to turn around, but showing some action with those quick wins is a big part of the process to getting there. So, you know, if that bin at the end of your street doesn't get emptied, you know, that's going to hinder how you feel about your place. So there are things that we can just quickly hit. So I think it's try to combine the kind of big picture with the micro things was a big part of what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Christopher, I'm going to bring you in now. Do you have a question for the team?
Hi both, thank you for your presentation. It's been a hugely ambitious kind of project, and knitting together four separate neighbourhoods. I think it must have been a challenge. How did you kind of balance the kind of issues that there must have been different issues across different neighbourhoods? How did you kind of balance all of these, and prioritise which ones kind of were maybe kind of shared across the whole, or which ones needed to kind of more attention more immediately? It'd be useful to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, I think so. We had some kind of set principles from the outset, which was that through stage 2, every area would have an accessibility audit with one, and that generally the kind of scale and scope of the stage 2 projects would be broadly similar. They were, of course, different. There's 4 livable neighbourhoods themes, but it wasn't such that each project was only covering one theme. So there were, a compilation of many issues that were brought to us that could then all be compressed into particular projects. So, it might have been that we, in Easter House, for example, we designed sort of 2 miles worth of carriageway reallocation, with pedestrian priority, raised tables and things like that. But that also took in key nodes where there might be placemaking activities and all sorts of other things. So we were trying to combine things as much as possible. I think we were just trying to push as much under the radar as we could, so the council didn't notice how much it was.
I think this is an interesting moment in the broader livable neighbourhoods journey. This is the 3rd tranche of 4 neighbourhoods, but this is the first time that a single consultant team did all 4 together. So previously they did split. So ourselves and Arcadis were involved in tranche 1, but we only did 2. Another consultant team did the other 2. So there was a kind of learning from the council side that maybe actually having one team do all 4 together was a better approach that allowed us to take a much more holistic view. And each neighbourhood has its own issues, but it also meant that we were able to find commonalities that could then be rolled out into a more citywide approach. So like a recurring thing was, it ties again into the feminist time planning piece, is that each of these neighbourhoods had multi-use games areas that were heavily underused and are quite problematic from a teenage girl perspective. They tend to be unsafe. All the data points that these are not great spaces. So within each neighbourhood, we had multiples of these things that had been put in place at great expense to the council for a number of years, and we were able to create a common approach to how you might tackle that issue, and we could apply it to each area that we worked in. So it then allows maybe the council and future funding streams to say, well, let's tackle all these collectively, and we know the nodes and the key points in each of these communities where we can begin to make adjustments that begin to deliver on bigger priorities. So I think there's something about the critical mass of doing the 4 that really opens up lots of other opportunities.
Chloe, let me get you in as well with your question.
Thanks, Christine. Ross and Pippa, thank you so much for the presentation. Excellent project. One question, actually I only have one question, but on the legacy side of things, can you just explain how the project has fostered a sense of community agency and self-organized action? Touching on Gemma's point, obviously you mentioned the quick wins, there's a lot of potential there, but again, it'd be great if you could just touch a little bit more on that side.
Yeah, so I think, I guess one of the really powerful things that's come out of the way that the engagement has run through this project is by embedding ourselves with the community anchor organizations. It's an opportunity to kind of link, create links and create relationships between those organizations, connecting them in with other kind of interest in the area, I suppose. So I think it's about the way in which you kind of knit many interests together has been helpful. So, we might have linked a community organization with the local shopping center operator who then, they're doing work in that area, which then enables other things to happen that have community benefits. So I think there was a bit of kind of facilitation that we were kind of enabling as we I think
we as a team begin to see ourselves as brokers of things. I think, you know, big local authorities like Glasgow can be quite impenetrable to its citizens, and that creates distrust and issues that perhaps actually aren't really there. So I think, you know, the Craig End project that Pippa touched on towards the end there is a great example. That is a community that has had a really poor relationship with its council over a number of years. And when we started this process, they were doing a parallel local place plan, and there was a lot of hostility. We went to meetings where we were the enemy, and through the process, we began to heal some of those relationships, and we're now actually their architect, and we're working with them and the council as a partner to deliver this vacant derelict land project that is going to roll into all manner of other things. So I think the big success of this project is that it's bringing some of those barriers down, and I think us at the centre as brokers and saying, well, we don't need to be involved in every project, but here's the projects we think are your priorities based on what you've told us. And within the reporting is a number of routes to how they can maybe be delivered and what partners you might want to tie in, so whether it's the housing association, whether it's the council property agents, whether, you know, however they might be, and also identifying the funding streams. So the council's participatory budgeting process, the Neighbourhood Investment Fund, is accessible to all community organisations within those. There's £1 million per ward in Glasgow. So some of that money is being used to put in the crossing, the safe crossing that they needed to go to school, is able to access that money with the backing of our engagement activity as the evidence for why it's needed and where it needs to go. So I think it's trying to build up a catalogue of things that others can go and access, and obviously the council can support that in whatever mechanism they choose to.
I want to squeeze you in, Elaine. We're running, so we might have a shorter answer to this one, but Elaine, I want to get your question in.
Thank you. You talked about it's such a large project, it's really easy to focus on the kind of macro, but I'm really interested in the micro, the street corners and the stories of individual people. So can you tell me one story quickly of an individual person that you met and how you're going to make their life better, or how you're going to change their street corner?
We met at one, I think it was the very first engagement event. We met a young woman who was with her mother at a knitting group, and she used a wheelchair, and she said she couldn't actually get into the park because there wasn't a dropped curb at any of the entrances to the park, and that's just absurd. You know, that you've got this amazing green space, a Victorian park with a boating point, you know, an incredible public green space, and she couldn't get into it, and that was like that's the quickest of wins. You know, even if we just did one dropped curb and suddenly she has access to that space. So I think it was identifying things like that are actually so fundamental to people's access to their space. So I think that
Thank you. It's really remarkable what a drop curb can do for people, isn't it?
Well, massively, yeah.
Yes, as somebody who once had a double buggy and and a kid on a scooter, and a dropped curb is sometimes all you need. Thank you so much for your presentation, and judges for your question. It's now time for us to travel to our next location.
Thank you.
Which is Enfield. We are now going to meet Curate Enfield in the London Borough of Enfield for the London Borough of Enfield, and that's presented by Claire Maloney, Place Shaping Manager at the London Borough of Enfield, and Safia Bonharali, who is Assistant Place Shaping Officer, also at the London Borough of Enfield. Hello, great to have you both with us, Claire and Safia.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here and to talk about Curate Enfield. So Curate Enfield is a grassroots public art programme which we piloted and delivered over 2 years between 2023 and 2025. The programme is designed to give residents and communities creative agency and take the lead in transforming their town centres and high streets through curating ambitious, vibrant and site-specific artworks. Can I have the next slide, Safia, please? So just to talk a bit about the context about Enfield. Curate Enfield is a borough-wide project. It's been delivered in 4 of our main town centres. Angel Edmonton, Enfield Town, Palmer's Green, Southgate, and in one of our emerging priority places, Southbury. These are all areas where there is significant development and regeneration taking place. So obviously that has an impact on our residents and communities. Enfield has significant challenges. It's in the top 13% of the most deprived boroughs in the country. 55% of children live in income-deprived households, and only a quarter of Enfield residents report regularly engaging in arts activities in conventional cultural venues. Without downplaying these challenges, I want to say that Curate Enfield is also inspired by the proaction and passion demonstrated by our residents and communities in getting stuck in and improving their neighbourhoods and high streets and working together to make places feel more safer, vibrant and welcoming. And while many residents don't visit conventional art venues, many do create and engage with culturally diverse activities within their own community settings on a regular basis. And it's these attributes that have really inspired Curate Enfield just as much as the challenges. Next slide, please. Just to run through the aims of the project. So to transform our town centres and high streets through bold, inspiring public art, empower local people to harness their creativity, expertise and lived experience, and strengthen the creative capacity and skills across the borough, and deliver meaningful, inclusive, high quality creative participation opportunities for our residents and communities. Next slide, please. The approach to the project, so we allocated roughly, sometimes it was a bit more, a bit less for each commission, around £22,000 per public art commission. And we recruited young people and respected community leaders from each of our town centre and priority areas to act as public art champions. And in each local area, we appointed a local artist mentor to support the public art champions throughout the process. And this group established a dynamic creative cluster within each location. So the champions and artist mentors were the experts. They understand what a site needs through their lived experience of each place. We provided training to the public art champions, and this was sort of quite intensive, delivered over 3 to 4 weeks. And they were given sort of skills and awareness in public consultation, site research, gaining permissions, developing artist briefs, how you might select an artist, community engagement, project management, marketing and communication. So this ensured they had the skills, knowledge and confidence required to lead and deliver each project from concept through to realisation. And it was really important that we delivered a flexible programme to fit around the champions' existing commitments. Many of them were young carers, had other work, study commitments, so the programme had to be really flexible to support that. And each champion was provided with a small honorarium to support their participation. Next slide, please. And in terms of who we engaged, so the public art champions, there were 15 in total, and their range age was from as young as 16 through to 80. And they were people who were very active in their communities, but not already on the council's radar. So that was really important to us, that we were reaching beyond our usual networks, and a very inclusive cohort. So it included, the champions included young carers, disabled and neurodivergent people, and a real range of diverse ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds that are really representative of each of the town centres and priority places. And the champions brought a range of really interesting disciplines to the project, including design, animation, architecture, marketing, heritage, writing, research and sociology practices. And more widely, we engaged 450 residents throughout the programme in co-design workshops and activities to design the artwork. So these took place through street conversations, walkabouts and co-design workshops. And we found that different engagement methods delivered in a range of contents really enabled us to reach residents where they already are. And so we engaged some of our most marginalised communities. And through these activities, participants were able to flex their creativity, share their local knowledge of each area, put forward their ideas and articulate their aspirations for each artwork. And some examples of the activities that people got involved in included primary age school children designing motifs for a new sculpture, exploring Enfield Town's lesser-known contemporary stories and diverse heritage with children and adults from refugee and migrant families, and teenage boys participating in youth justice reparation projects, assisting in the painting of murals themselves, and then members of an adult mental health support group co-designing some of the murals as well. Next slide, please. And I just want to run through the resulting artwork. So the programme has produced 40 new public artworks for the borough. Each one has been developed and strengthened by the participants' insight and reflecting the communities they represent. So these include an Angel for Edmonton sculpture outside Snells Park housing estate. This borders with Haringey, so it provides a really striking welcome into Angel Edmonton Town Centre. Next slide. A Stroll Through Enfield Town mural. This is reanimating a busy yet previously dark and uninspiring thoroughfare in Enfield Town. And clockwise from the top left, we've got Fire and Flight, The Cat and the Aviary, Rhythm of Broomfield Park, and Sanctuary murals representing the rich cultural diversity and urban nature of Palmer's Green. Next slide, please. And a portrait of Southgate Art Trail. So 28 exquisite mosaics co-designed with local special educational need pupils, local makers and faith groups, and celebrating cherished local characters and landmarks in Southgate. Next slide, please. Morning commute mural opposite Southbury Station, providing a really warm welcome into the area for commuters and residents. Next slide, please. Parading around murals, uplifting some shop shutters on Southbury Parade. Next slide, please. I just to go through the wider impact of the project. So in addition to creating these wonderful artworks for our borough, we really feel like this project is cultivating the next generation of creative leaders in the borough and strengthening intergenerational and community ties. So 5 of our public art champions have gone on to secure paid employment opportunities following their participation. This includes 3 who are currently employed by the council, including Helena, who now runs the Enfield Young Creatives Network, Safia, who's joined our place shaping team, and John, who's running a community engagement programme for a major heritage project in Palmer's Green, and has also joined a new stakeholder-led steering group for Enfield Town Centre. It's also supported the local economy through creating paid opportunities for 14 local artists. So this includes the artist mentors, supporting the champions, but also the artists commissioned through the programme to deliver the artworks. And we held launches at local cafes and businesses in each town centre and place, generating some income for these local businesses, and then also promoting them to a wider range of people and future customers. And I think overall the artworks have helped just make our town centres and high streets feel more attractive to visitors and residents. And this is supporting, laying down the groundwork for future enterprise and growth. And I just want to end with and hand over to Safia to talk about the wider legacy. And Safia was a public art champion involved in our Southbury project. And I'm just going to hand over to her to speak now on the impact the project has had on her. Over to you, Safia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Safia Banharali, and about a year ago, I was introduced to Claire and given the opportunity to become a public art champion for Southbury for part of the Create Enfield project. At the time, I don't think I realized how much the project would have actually shaped me as a person and my direction in life. As an Enfield resident and Southbury local, this project felt deeply personal. These are the streets that I walk every day with my friends and family, so being able to contribute creatively to something that would live on in my own community was incredibly special. I was involved from the early stages of research and community engagement through to behind the scenes decision making and all the way to spray painting the mural and celebrating on launch day. Now seeing the murals move from concept to completion and now passing them regularly remains one of my proudest moments. I brought my background in research to better understand the real social context of Southbury, exploring how people experience space, identify its third spaces, and observe the steady rhythms of everyday life that shape the area's character. But the real legacy for me is for what came next. Through the project, Claire offered me the opportunity to join the play shaping team at Enfield Council. The transition felt natural as the work aligns closely with my interests in urban space, community voice, and shaping places with purpose. This experience didn't just leave a mark on the walls of Southbury, but it also shaped my own direction. It opened a path into play shaping that I may have not otherwise explored, and for that I'm extremely grateful. I hope to continue building on this experience by shaping places rooted in community voice and lived experience. Thank you.
Amazing to hear that testimonial. Thank you so much, Safia. It's really great to hear that straight from you, and Claire for your presentation. I know the judges are going to have their questions, and here they are arriving now. Elaine, would you like to go first this time?
I knew you were going to come to me because the presentation answered all of my questions. In particular, Safia, thank you so much for giving us your kind of first-hand experience, and it gave us a really good feeling of the legacy of the project. So and it's really inspiring to hear. I suppose my question, because you've answered my question, is what's next?
Is that what's next for Safia or for the project?
And Curate Enfield, and also about maintenance. How do you keep it looking so great going forward? Because obviously murals can degrade over time.
Yeah. I'll answer that first bit first, and then I'll hand back to Safia. So within each budget, we put in a maintenance budget. So part of the artists commission was to hold back a bit of budget, and we could top that up if necessary for them to maintain any ongoing damage. I mean, the artworks are, I think there was sufficient budget to ensure they were of high quality, so they have a reasonable life. But also, I think because of the way the project was delivered and the community involvement right from beginning to end, there is a real strong sense of community ownership around each of these artworks. So there's a lot of pride, and that kind of mitigates anything like, vandalism or graffiti. And so that's sort of, that's given its own level of protection. But on a practical level, we've built in a maintenance budget. Safia, what's next?
So now I'm part of the play shaping team, and I'm working with Claire again in Southbury as a priority place. I think we're putting out play shaping initiatives. We're helping make the area more vibrant and welcoming. So I think for now that's it.
I think as well, I think the project, in terms of what's next, more generally, the project has really informed how we deliver wider play shaping and regeneration programs, and not just public art. There is, we're always trying to build in paid opportunities for our emerging creators in the borough, because there's lots of amazing creative young people, but there hasn't been always the paid opportunities to meet that range of talent. So we're trying to factor those in, embed those into the projects that we do more widely now as we go forward. And it's really informed a new set of public art guidelines. So the project's really informed that and is sort of shaping the way we do deliver public art in the borough.
Thank you.
Chloe, I'm going to pass to you. This feels like this is right in your expertise. So I'm interested in your question.
Thanks for handing over the baton, Christine. And Claire, thank you so much for the presentation. I actually have a best friend in Enfield, and I need to go and check out these murals myself.
Oh, please do.
But Claire, you've actually skirted on my next question, so I might have to dial it up a little bit. But it was more about how Curate Enfield has influenced the art projects in the borough, and perhaps even on a London scale or beyond. But in a T, like, what would you say have been the key learnings and takeaways that could be implemented elsewhere, perhaps?
I think it's being brave enough to hand over the control, to hand over the reins, the creative agency. And I'm really grateful that the councils aren't known for handing over a lot of control, but the council in this case has been very supportive and quite relaxed. There is an element of risk. So I think it's being prepared to take the risk, and that, you know, local residents, we might be the place shaping team, but local residents know more about their area and what it needs and what its challenges are and what its issues are and also what its attributes are more than anyone else. And I think it's really about harnessing that creativity, that passion that residents have to really, you know, there's a pride, there's an existing pride to actually make an area better and more positive for everybody. So I think it's taking that leap of faith and really, I think, you know, ideally what we want in the future is that, you know, residents have the agency to run these projects. They don't necessarily need a council to do this, that it's actually just happening in communities, and we're there maybe to just sort of steward and guide and advise, but actually it's about instilling that autonomy within our communities, because it is there, it just needs harnessing.
Thank you very much.
Christopher, can I bring you in?
Thanks both for the presentation, and, you know, yeah, inspiring and fantastic artworks that you've got in Enfield, which again, like Chloe, I'm going to have to come and have a look at firsthand. I think with any kind of community projects, and despite every best effort, you kind of get to the end, and there's always someone that kind of pokes their head up and go, "What's going on here? I'm not aware of this." Were there any lessons or any groups that you felt you somehow missed or didn't, and that you now from this project have got any lessons learnt, and how you might kind of approach the outreach differently for other projects?
I suppose the project, I guess there's probably, if we were to do a rough percentage split, there's probably like 70% children, young people focused in a lot of the outreach that we did. We did engage some elders in the projects in Southgate and Palmer's Green. I think, yeah, if we were to do it again, we might look at how we could engage I guess more of our community elders, but I felt that they were also engaged through matching older community leaders with younger people as public art champions. That really kind of brought those generations together. And I guess, yeah, doing it again, I would really like to build on that a bit more. I think on the whole, because we spent probably about 6 months recruiting our public art champions, and sort of digging deep to find people that, you know, we didn't already know about. That really unlocked a lot of our outreach. You can always go deeper, absolutely. So I guess we just do more and better next time.
Great, thank you.
And Gemma, can I bring you in?
Thanks both for a great presentation. It looks like you've inserted a lot of joy into the area, and it's great to see the colour and all the amazing sort of range of work as well. You were saying that, you know, there's a legacy is really building the skills of local people, and you cited sort of project management and, you know, wider community engagement, and it's evident that there are opportunities that have been made. I was quite interested in the interface between sort of co-designing the works and then the delivery of the works, and how that was managed in between. So you're saying sort of local artists were procured to deliver. Were there opportunities for people to be involved in that tendering process and actually maybe even deliver the works themselves with the contractors as well? So yeah, I'm quite interested in that journey into delivery.
Yeah, so the public art champions were, if you think in each creative cluster with the artist mentor and the public art champions, supported by myself, they formed the panel for each commission. Mm-hmm. So they all participated in selecting who the artist was, and then and obviously building the brief. And within the brief, as much as having amazing artistic skills, it was very much around the artist having community engagement embedded into their practice. So the selected artists, you know, it was just as much part of the brief to deliver the artworks the quality of the community engagement and how our wider residents would have opportunities to really inform and participate in defining what the artworks were, so the concepts, but also, putting forward their ideas, like, I think my town centre needs this. I think this is something that's really interesting about this area, and it'd be really nice if the artwork could articulate this. So it was quite a challenge for the artist to sort of navigate all of that. But the participation programme was built into every commission. And then in terms of delivering some of the artworks, as I mentioned in the presentation, I mean, we had young teenage boys who were participating in youth justice projects. We also had sixth form art students who came and helped paint murals. Literally we had in Angel Edmonton, people making 3D models of angel motifs and what an angel represents to them, which were then directly incorporated into the artworks. So it's very, very visceral and tangible. And we've literally got kids from Southbury Primary School bringing their parents to come and see a morning commute because they're picking out the particular things that they designed in the workshops with the artists, and saying, that's mine, I did that. So it was very embedded into each commission.
Well, that just leaves me to thank you for your presentation and judges for your questions.
Thank you.
We're now going to travel again. We are heading to Caerphilly, to Caerphilly Town 2035, Caerphilly for Caerphilly County Borough Council with Stride2Glown, Cowshed and Future Places Toolkit. And this project is presented by Paul Seaver, who is Associate Director, Head of Master Planning and Urban Design at Stride2Glown, and Tawny Chambers, who's Director of Engagement and Insights for Cowshed. So welcome both.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you.
You're coming in loud and clear and your presentation is here, so I will see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Right, just to start, the Festival Ideas represents a really exciting milestone in our ongoing placemaking journey for Caerphilly Town Centre. Stride2Glown and Cowshed have been working together with Caerphilly County Borough Council for a number of years in building a much stronger platform for community engagement to support the delivery of the town centre's placemaking plan. And last summer, in response to an awful lot of very specific feedback we've been receiving from the local community, we created this Festival of Ideas to bring everybody's focus to an area known as the top of the town. It's broadly that stretch of High Street around Cardiff Road that connects the train and bus station at one end, all the way down to the magnificent Caerphilly Castle at the other. This intensive period of activities and conversations was all about working with as many people as possible from the local community to identify a range of easy to implement interventions and initiatives for improving the top of the town. Caerphilly is a town of about 40,000 people. Thank you. About 15 minutes on the train north of Cardiff. The town is dominated by Caerphilly Castle. It's one of the largest castles in the UK, but like many town centres, it's faced economic challenges, social deprivation, and declining footfall. Although the placemaking plan for the town centre had been launched pre-COVID in 2020, by 2024, only about a quarter of the residents surveyed in our annual residents survey were even aware of it. And more than half of them said that they were dissatisfied with the town centre, describing it as run down, disconnected, and lacking pride. Most importantly, though, residents felt changes being done to them, not with them, and we were constantly hearing about this lack of trust in council decisions. We kept hearing that people wanted to be more directly involved in shaping the plans, and so this was our starting point for the Festival of Ideas.
Yeah, and our challenge wasn't simply gathering feedback, it was rebuilding trust and helping to show the residents of Caerphilly that their voice was really, really important in their placemaking plan and that we did really want to hear it. As Paul said, previous engagement had showed us that residents didn't really know how to participate. They didn't feel heard, or they didn't believe that their participation would lead to any change. So we wanted to move beyond consultation and towards co-creation. And we wanted the outcome of the Festival of Ideas to be tangibly seen and to be felt by our co-creators as well. So the Festival of Ideas was our way of turning that engagement into something visible, into something creative and something impossible to ignore. Over 6 weeks, we transformed the town centre into an ideas lab, inviting residents to imagine, to design and to shape the future of their town centre together. We didn't want people to only fill in forms contributing their concerns. What we wanted them to do was collectively imagine the solutions and how they see the future of their town. We designed our activities to be hands-on, to be accessible, and importantly, to be welcoming to people who wouldn't normally attend consultations. We really wanted our participation to feel like a community event and not a formal process. Alongside this, we launched a targeted communications campaign. This really helped us reach people where they already were, whether that was online, in their community spaces, or in their local media. We also developed a standalone brand for engagement for the placemaking plan. Really wanted to allow people to recognise the importance of what we were doing and the importance of their participation. And we wanted this to feel playful and fun and distinct as well. So the Festival of Ideas sits within a 5-phase engagement strategy: pre-engagement, discovery, prioritisation, feasibility and activation. Pre-engagement really allowed us to explore sentiment, issues and concerns with this area of town, but the Festival of Ideas was about creating those solutions. Then prioritisation, where we are now, this is enabling us to keep our co-creators involved. We're here, we're in this phase, we're taking back the ideas that they generated last year and we're testing them with them through hands-on sessions before moving towards delivery later in 2026. It's our goal that we'll have community action days where the residents and the participants can volunteer to get involved and be part of bringing those activations to life. And really, we wanted to do this because we wanted to ensure that their ideas didn't just disappear into a report, that they moved towards implementation. We particularly focused our efforts on seldom heard voices missing from previous engagement. And this for us included disabled residents, older adults, young people, families and town centre businesses. We worked through trusted community organisations, taking our Ideas Lab to them, such as Valleys Daffodils, which is a local charity and day centre for disabled adults and their carers, through the Caerphilly Women's Institute, Caerphilly Youth Forum and Caerphilly Business Club. We wanted the engagement to feel authentic to them, welcoming to them, but we really wanted to leverage these existing strong networks. Moving on. So during our pre-engagement, we undertook workshops with several groups that were residents, businesses and primary school children. We asked them to become town planners during these sessions, explore this area, explore Cardiff Road, explore the park and investigate how you would like to improve it. This gave us a broad enough idea of the issues, but we really wanted to invite more people to help shape the solutions. Our centrepiece for the Festival of Ideas was a public activation day in the town centre. We designed this to be highly visible and concentrated on the area that we were asking people to reimagine. We stood with our co-creators in the centre of town and asked them to think about their future. They contributed through creative activities like Brick by Brick Ideas Wall, children designing dream towns with Lego, an ideas tree for location-specific suggestions, and augmented reality tools that helped these participants really visualize future possibilities. So we worked with Future Places Toolkit on the augmented reality sessions, where our participants used devices that allowed them to see and hear through time. They walked through the target area, giving their input, helping to shape and experience Cardiff Road as they want it to be in 2035. This immersive tech really demonstrated every actionable change suggested and allowed for immediate feedback from planters to parklets or pedestrianising the roads or large outdoor performance spaces. My favourite bit, children dressing up as the King or Queen of Caerphilly and presenting their ideas as manifestos for the town. But alongside this, we delivered bilingual workshops and a bilingual survey to ensure multiple ways to participate. So everything we did was delivered in both English and in Welsh. We purposefully use creative non-verbal methods, the Lego, the visuals, the AR, which allowed people to contribute regardless of, their confidence, their literacy, or any prior knowledge or prior experience taking part in things like this. And our goal was really to bring to life the Ideas Lab. We wanted to encourage people to be playful. Alongside all of this, we offered several informal, casual ways for people to participate so they could choose their own level of comfort, whether that be, prompts on screens around the venues or short feedback forms, as well as everything else.
And we're already starting to see the impacts of the festival in a number of ways. A lot of the ideas that the community came up with revolved around making the top of the town look smarter. So things like litter picking, street cleaning, planting. But something that also stood out was the community's desire to have pride in their town centre, a place that tells their story. So as an early intervention, we're working with different artists, including a couple who live in the town centre with their children, and our own landscape team to improve the arrival experience into the town centre. And through that, we've been developing the Caerphilly Characters campaign with the residents community to celebrate the stories of the community, some of which you might spot in this image of the new relief map the town centre has been made, from medieval princes to Johnny Rotten and Tommy Cooper and Amy Downey. But the stronger legacy really will be in creating an engagement platform that long outlives Tanya's and my involvement in this project. The festival has really helped to get more people involved in the shaping of the delivery.
And so to sustain this momentum, we established ongoing community forums or secured partnerships with existing networks. So this is our residents committee, which grew from 45 to 75 members throughout the process, a business network, our youth forum, the community action days, which I've already mentioned. And these groups and these networks that we've established from the Festival of Ideas continue to shape the decisions, to test ideas, and to advocate for the project locally. So we meet with these groups on a quarterly basis, ensuring that our relationships are consistently maintained. Again, it's not just one-off consultation. We are building advocates with influence. We want to help them continue to shape Caerphilly Town Centre, and we want to truly respond to local need.
So our Festival of Ideas demonstrates how meaningful engagement can transform relationships between communities and placemaking. By shifting it from consultation to partnership, we've helped residents move from feeling like they've been passive recipients of change to stewards of their own future. This really isn't a one-off engagement exercise. It's really meant to be the foundation for long-term community ownership in Caerphilly. Whilst our immediate focus is on delivering some of these interventions, we're also excited to plan for another Festival of Ideas later in the year based around the Castle.
Yeah, we'll be making sure as many people in Caerphilly come and imagine the future of their outdoor town centre spaces as well. So, we know that traditional consultation often asks people to respond to predefined options, but the Festival of Ideas flipped that. We started with a blank sheet and we invited people to define their solutions. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that presentation. I'm going to invite our judges to join us on stage for their questions. And here they come. Christopher, would you be ready to ask your question first this time?
Sure, thanks, Christine, and thank you both for your presentation. And yeah, it sounds like it's all very inspiring in Caerphilly with your Festival of Ideas. And you mentioned that you've got some ideas that are kind of in process to be delivered later this year. It'd be useful to know kind of how you plan to measure these ideas once they're delivered, as to how to know that they have been successful or landed as the community kind of envisaged.
Well, we've been using the residents committee that's been set up as part of this. It's been running now for a few years. And the residents committee is made up of a large number of local people who are invested in their community. It provides us with the ability for us to test ideas with them and kind of talk them through and understand, are things likely to land well as certainly as intended. And by going through that process with them, we get to kind of refine the ideas, shape them, shift them, and feed them back. It's very much a sort of a two-way process. So we can use we can we use the residence committee quite strongly to try and sort of test some of these ideas. Also in the background, unrelated to kind of the pure engagement side, we have been developing a monitoring framework, as we might of kind of the broader placemaking plan delivery program. So that's enabling us to look at how we're trying to achieve success across a series of different metrics. And so the engagement isn't being done in isolation. It's all part of this kind of wider program of activities to ensure that we are achieving what we set out to achieve in terms of those kind of broader aims for the town centre.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
just to add to that, it does go beyond the residents committee. As I've said, we've got that ongoing partnership with the youth forum, so we're keeping that feedback loop open there. We've got our business network as well, which was developed directly from the back of the Festival of Ideas. So there are multiple routes, and a councillor comms group as well. There are multiple routes with different stakeholders for us to keep that feedback back and forth.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Gemma, can I bring you in?
Yes, thank you both for a fantastic presentation. My question's actually kind of the beginning of your presentation. I think you were talking about your 5-stage process, and the first one being pre-engagement, and that you were sort of looking to rebuild trust. I just invite you to expand on that a bit more, because I think it's sort of fundamental, and whether that was, I can imagine, sort of an ongoing work stream as you're also trying to be creative. So yeah, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about how you rebuilt trust.
Yeah, shall I take that, Paul? Yeah, so the pre-engagement was actually born from earlier engagement that we were doing and work with the residents committee, where we were finding that traditional consultation or public displays, exhibitions, trying to communicate with the community was being met with some resistance. And what people were telling us is that they wanted to shape the plans, and it was this specific area of town that was causing them the most issues. So responding to earlier engagement and feedback that we'd got in previous surveys, that's where we started to explore those issues. So we first took the residents committee on the walkabout. We're like, okay, we're hearing from everybody that this is an area that is a concern, and that you would like to be involved in shaping it. So let's just explore together. We repeated that with businesses, and we repeated that with young children as well, to just get that really broad sense of the different stakeholders that use those spaces. And it was from there that actually we saw that we were being just inspired and being given all of these fantastic ideas and creative solutions. So the Festival of Ideas was born from that. We were getting broad ideas, broad creativity, a broad sense of the issues, and that's where we thought this is a fantastic opportunity for us to respond to that feedback that people feel disillusioned by the process and bring them in.
Thank you.
Elaine, I'm going to jump to you.
Thank you for your presentation. It seems like you've been on quite a journey from firstly identifying that the community when it felt disaffected and not involved, to developing a very kind of robust methodology and relationships with the community. I'm really interested in kind of the mechanism which you're going to take their very, really inspiring ideas and local knowledge about kind of the place they live, and how you're going to help them kind of deliver that change. In one of the earlier presentations, I mentioned just putting in a drop curve, for example, matching funding with Section 106. What are the conversations you're having now to move things from a change of process to a kind of an action?
Well, the feedback that we've had through the process has been that, like Tony said, we've had lots of different ideas. We had sort of set a set of parameters around the sorts of interventions we were looking for. So they were meant to be sort of quicker wins, easier to implement, the less complicated types of ones that would actually make an impact fairly quickly. There are lots of other projects that are going on as part of the placemaking plan generally, which are much bigger and much more complex, like a new hotel and new apartments and things like that in the town. So this was very much focused on the public realm in an area that everybody had sort of felt fairly disillusioned by. The council has been working really hard. As everybody knows, councils are tight on funding, and funding opportunities, but they've had a huge amount of support from the Welsh Government through its Transforming Towns programme. They've been a big supporter of the council in trying to affect change meaningfully across the town centre. So the sorts of ideas that they've been that the community have come up with have been around things like improving wayfinding, so getting from the train station down to the castle, and there are big ideas for things like, it's been sort of dubbed the yellow brick road, just even kind of painting a line from the top of the street down all the way to the castle. So when you arrive, you just follow the line to take you there. That was one of the ideas that the residents came up with in that augmented reality session. Somebody came up with the idea, and they all then started working with it, and so that they could see the line appearing on the street in front of them through their devices. So they're kind of intended to be easier to implement. However, as I mentioned, and I kind of feel that's one of the landscape schemes that is being brought forward, which is a bit more complicated, complex in terms of improving the landscape and the connectivity between the visitor car park up to the town centre. That was an opportunity for us to expand our scope and remit to include the artists to come in and to start to really enliven it with more creative play, as well as that relief map and other things like that. So we can start to explore how to bring those characters to life through this storytelling, through the intervention. So it's meant to be at sort of different levels. Some things will take longer to implement, so others will be hopefully shorter. And we're kind of working with the council to work out which parts or which of those interventions, things like more street cleaning and things like that, sounds very mundane, but actually is what people keep talking about. Bins, bin collections, they're very kind of mundane sorts of things, but actually have a huge impact on how people see. So again, we're trying to kind of work out how we can weave that sort of feedback into, I suppose, everyday council activities, but in a coordinated way that actually responds to the feedback that we've heard through the process.
And I would love to add there, actually, beyond like the physical interventions and the activations, it's the advocacy that we've built. So, you know, several members of our residents committee now communicate the reports, the feedback, the findings, and what's happening next for us on our behalf without being asked to on social media. So it's using them as that tool as well. We're almost developing community champions for their own ideas, and they're helping us tackle any of that resistance as well. So that sits alongside those community activation days. Once we move further into that 5-stage process and we know what those ideas are definitely going to be, we want to help. We want to invite people back to pick up a paintbrush, help us plant these planters. We want that to, again, be very highly visible, very highly branded. These are your ideas, and we're bringing them to life with you.
Thank you.
Chloe, for the final question.
Thank you. So Gemma and Chris, you actually stolen my questions, but I've got a third one up my sleeve. Tanya and Paul, thank you for your presentation. My question actually speaks to your youth forum. It'd be great to know, again, like how many people does it comprise of, what their ages or what their interests, disciplines, and lastly, what they gain from the process. So it'd be just nice to know a little bit more about that element of engagement.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chloe. It's not our youth forum, so it's a partnership that we have with an existing youth forum. So this is the County Borough Youth Forum, and there are 65 young people, and they are from across the borough, ages 11 to 18. So we have informally engaged with them over the last 3 years while we've been working on this placemaking plan. So, you know, we've gone in, we've delivered sessions, or we've taken feedback on ideas, but during the Festival of Ideas, we made that partnership formal. So we've now secured that relationship where we have 3 visits a year to work with them to refine and to test and to develop those ideas. So yeah, so they're across the borough, they're comprised of a mix of genders, age 11 to 18, and some young carers as well.
Brilliant. Thanks for that clarification, Tanya.
No worries.
Thank you.
Well, that brings this first half to a close. So thank you both for your presentation, and judges for your questions, which always adds so much to this process. It's really great to hear from you all. So we are going to take a quick 5-minute break. So get yourself a cup of tea, and we'll be back with the second half of community engagement. So we will see you back here in 5 minutes. Hello and welcome back to the Festival of Pineapples, the live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place. My name is Christine Murray. I'm co-founder of the Pineapples and founding editor-in-chief of The Developer and director of the Festival of Place, and I'm your chair for this category. So this Pineapple seeks to recognize excellence in community engagement. We just had 4 great presentations and we've got 4 more to come. A reminder that each presenter has 10 minutes to present to the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will then retire in private to decide the winner. Who is going to be the winner? That is only announced at the awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. And you can find out more about that event at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of finalists are also invited to join us on stage at the Festival of Place, not just the winners, but a selection across the finalists. We call them the Chair's Pick. So do find out more about that event. If you love the Pineapples, you'll love the Festival of Place. So I'm going to welcome back our judges. The judges, we are so grateful for their time and insight. We have with us Chloe McFarlane, Community Engagement Manager for Grosvenor Property UK. Chloe supports initiatives that deliver Grosvenor's people positive strategy of focusing on increasing community well-being, building sector diversity, and targeted philanthropy. Gemma Hollyoak is development manager at Hackney Council. She recently joined Hackney, and in her prior role at Developer Town, she was a development manager and worked across a number of projects, including Angel Yard and Co-Housing Upon Time. And Christopher Arthy is a longtime Pineapple judge and director of Axiom Developments. He is a planning and development surveyor and director of Axiom, which is a land promotion and project development company. And we have Elaine Cresswell with us, director at Reshaped, also a longtime Pineapple judge, an enthusiastic chartered landscape architect, sustainability and engagement specialist, and director of Reshaped. Elaine is a member of Design Council, Places Matter, Cheshire West and Chester Design Review Panel, and Landscape Institute representative on the Building with Nature Advisory Board. So it's now time to hear from our next project. First up is the Educational Engagement Program Greater London for Places for London, with Barrett London, Fastned, Granger, Earls Court Development Company, Helical, and Construction Youth Trust. And this project is going to be presented by Rima Hakizimana, who is Construction Skills Project Coordinator, and Laura Miller, who is Senior Construction Skills Manager, both at Places for London. So they should be joining me on stage momentarily with their presentation. I think actually we are just missing one of our presenters. So I am actually going to jump to our second presentation. Hopefully they're ready, and then we can loop back for Rima once she joins the session. So can we please welcome Women's Safety Audit Pilots from also Greater London for Transport for London and MOPAC with We Made That and UCL Citizen Science Academy. And that would be presented by Eve Avdulos, who is Senior Associate and Urban Research Lead at We Made That, and Esther Sewell, Community Researcher. So I think we just need to hustle their presentation while where everyone is working very hard backstage. So I hope you can bear with me as we bring our teams together. So here we go.
Great.
Hello, Eve and Esther. A little bit of a shock join there. I hope that you're feeling suitably energized by your impromptu invitation to stage.
Would you like us to kick off, Christine, then?
That would be great. I can hear you and see you in your presentations with us. So over to you.
Fantastic. First of all, thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here in such a great company of amazing projects. And I'm also very pleased to be joined by Esther, who is one of our community researchers on this project. So today I'll be presenting about the community, in the community engagement category, the Women's Safety Audit Pilot Project, which we had the absolute pleasure of completing with the UCL Citizen Science Academy, as well as an advisory board made up of wonderful individuals, including Professor Claire Rishbeth, Hannah Bauman, Tiffany Lamb, Mary Helen Young, and Annabelle Precious. So safety in public spaces, as we all know, is a fundamental right. Yet many women and girls and gender diverse people still feel unsafe in their daily environments. To address this Women's Safety Audit Pilot Project, which was commissioned by Transport for London and the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, set out to explore how to meaningfully engage these communities and capture their lived experiences and perceptions of safety. As I talk about a safety audit, many of you are probably wondering, what is this? So at its very core, a safety audit is a participatory research approach to assess the safety and security concerns of women in public spaces and the practice of safety measures to protect them. There's no single method for a women's safety audit, and they're done all around the world in various different ways. Our job was to understand what works in London and what do London's communities need to be able to express their experiences of safety. So for this particular research project, 5 different women's safety audit methods were developed and piloted across London. These include interviews, small group discussions, checklists, participatory mapping, and multisensory walking. Each of these offered something a little bit different and a different way to engage with space and understand questions around safety in the built environment. They were also all very accessible and were able to cater to different people's needs. So these were the 5 that developed out of this project. The safety audits were piloted in 5 different locations across London, which include Uxbridge in Hillingdon, Wembley in Brent, Paddington in Westminster, Brixton in Lambeth, and Walthamstow in Waltham Forest. The locations were predetermined by TfL and MOPAC, the commissioners of the piece, because there was some sort of existing initiative there. So it was more likely that the project outcomes could tangibly influence those spaces. They were also chosen because they represented different types of urban environments. So we have different types of spaces like green spaces, parks, high streets, bus stations, tube stations, etc. So having a wide range of places and methods could allow us to really understand what are the different ways and most preferable ways that women, girls, and gender diverse people could share their experiences. Core to this project was using a community research method to undertake the audits themselves. Community research approach is where you train local people to undertake the research themselves, and the professional researchers become merely the facilitators of this process. This ensured that we could capture a diverse experience of London's communities. And it was interesting because this was not initially in the brief put out by TfL and MOPAC, but they were very open to adopting a different type of approach, which shows, I think, a really nice relationship in terms of having an open mind from the commissioner's behalf, and then us as a research team being able to explore new ways of doing things. So we recruited and trained local women, girls, and gender diverse people across London to be researchers in their own community. So each of the 5 locations had their own cohort of researchers. They received full training and they were paid for their time. And they were also made up of London's diverse communities. So we really wanted a nice cross-section of the wonderful people that live in London to participate in this research. This approach at its core, and many of the reasons why we wanted to do this is because it emphasizes inclusion of community perspectives and active participation. It provides access to better quality data, that it's nuanced and locally grounded. So what we found is that the community researchers could get a lot more rich information than a facilitator from outside of any other place could be able to achieve. It shifts power from the institutions to the people. It creates evidence-informed solutions that address local needs, bridging the gap between communities and policymakers. And it provides valuable training and professional development opportunities for local non-academic researchers. The project took place in 4 stages. The first was with recruiting the community researchers, preparing the audit materials, and learning from best practice around the world. We received over 200 applications from women who were interested in this project and the subject matter, showing the importance of looking at this in this way. And then once the researchers were selected, they received a full day of training led by our We Made That team, the advisory board, and UCL Citizen Science Academy. Following the training, the researchers went out into their own communities and conducted between 1 and 2 safety audits with their friends and family in their selected location. They could use whatever methods they wanted. But interestingly, most of them chose multisensory walking and interviews, which highlighted a preference for conversation and creativity. After the audits, we held reflections workshops with the researchers to understand what worked, what didn't, what they would change, and what they heard. The methods were then adapted based on this feedback to make sure that they were as inclusive and accessible as they could be. We then gathered all of the data from the audits that the researchers conducted, which was over 1,000 data points, and brought this together in which we called location reports for each of these areas. We then used the location report to facilitate audits to actions workshops with local stakeholders, including those from TfL, MOPAC, local design and regen teams, community safety teams, council officers, and even the Met Police, to discuss the findings and help brainstorm ways in which they could be implemented and acted upon in each local area. Finally, we were able to undertake further testing of the methodology on a very live project in Brent, using everything learned from the pilot project to strengthen the approach. So we undertook audits in a planned cycle route in the area, and we wanted to understand how the design teams can improve the initial scheme and incorporate the safety concerns of local women in the area. These are just some lovely snapshots of our community researchers and advisory board and trainers from across the pilot project. And in terms of impact, so the project had a range of impacts, but the first is that the methodology tested and the idea of using community researcher approach for the women's safety audit really allowed us to capture a range of different views and experiences and helped ensure that the methods conducted to conduct the audits are inclusive and accessible. So by numbers, we had 47 community researchers were recruited. They were aged 17 to 70 and reflected the diversity of London in every way possible, from background, ethnicity, language, religion, gender, sexual identity, you name it. We had everybody kind of from various experiences, and it was fantastic. This really allowed us to gather different perspectives, but also ensure that we were hearing from a cross-section of London's population. Also, through this approach, we were able to gather the views of people who might not traditionally be involved in the research. So these 47 community researchers went out and conducted 75 audits, and in total spoke to 117 participants. Mind you, that was achieved in 2 weeks. So it also shows you the scope of the research and what it can achieve. And the diversity of the participants that were involved is also something worth highlighting. We heard from so many different people, including those with lived experience of violence against women and girls, those who are experiencing homelessness, those who are neurodivergent, moms, grandmas, teenagers, school children. It was a really nice way to hear from a very, very wide population and understand different experiences of safety. It also allowed us to gather deep place-based insights. So we were able to explore how the methods gathered can map onto specific places and understand how people feel in different areas. This is really important when designing any type of intervention because you can ensure that it's place-specific. And these location reports also enabled us to highlight issues that might require partnership working to achieve, recognizing that not all issues of safety are design-based, and they also serve as a catalyst for breaking down traditional siloed working and understand where different partners need to come together and address specific issues. And one of the other impacts is that the project itself shifts power and voice to the community. So here's where I'm going to hand it over to Esther to share a little bit about her experience working as a community researcher on the project.
Thanks, Eve. And as Eve rightly said, I was one of a few people that were chosen to be a part of this project. And for myself, to just begin with the why, so one of the areas that was highlighted was the Brent area. And Brent is an area that I've lived my whole life. And some of the issues that was pointing out within the project in itself has been things that I've also gone through individually. So the project in itself was something that's quite dear to my heart and something that I've been able to see the real value within the community in itself. Just to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the things that we were able to speak about and the training that I got. So as Eve rightly said, we went around doing a number of stakeholder interviews and also looking around the area to see, for example, how we're lighting, how we're greenery. And that was really important for me because it was actually a space where I was able to get consensus with different other stakeholders as well, who were able to also share some of their feelings and how the community is at present, but also certain things that they want to see in the future. And so a project like this is so important because it's not only speaking about the current issues that the community faces, but also looking at what can be done within the future to also impact young girls, young women, and those who may be experiencing some of the issues regarding to safety. So yeah, just I'll hand back over to Eve to continue us on.
Thanks, Esther. And to conclude here, I'll leave you with a few final the impacts that we really felt this project achieved. So it mobilizes communities. We had an evaluation of the project, and we found that 84% of the researchers who participated reported feeling more connected to, empowered to, and make change within, and more confident raising issues in their communities. We also democratized the method. So there's a downloadable how-to guide and method toolkit to enable everyone to be able to conduct their own safety audits. It has transformed policy. So we know that the safety audits are being embedded into project methodologies by both commissioners and design practices. We know this is taking place further in Lambeth and Westminster, for example. It develops transferable skills. So participants have secured paid positions and taken on leadership roles in their local communities. One of our participants has gone on to serve as co-chair of her local Violence Against Women and Girls group after participating in this project, which we were really pleased to hear. It strengthens partnerships, so it provides tools for stakeholders to work together, come together on those similar issues. And finally, it raises awareness. So it raises the importance of designing safer and more inclusive spaces for all. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that presentation, and always so powerful to hear right from the community's mouth with Esther. It's so great to have your experience shared. And I know our judges are keen to ask their questions, so I'm going to welcome them back to the stage. But Chloe, I thought you could go first, perhaps, and share your insights and thoughts.
Thank you, Christine. Esther and Eve, thank you so much for your presentation. My question actually relates to your last slide. I understand you produced a number of materials, your how-to guide. Can you tell me how you're strategically disseminating it to amplify your impact, again, in London and beyond? Yeah,
that's a great question. So it's available on our website, but we're currently working with TfL and MOPAC to push it out more widely. Because they're the commissioners of this work, it does sit with them to be able to kind of use their soft power and influence to work towards getting it out widely. But we do know at the moment they have been pushing it to, as I mentioned, current design schemes that are taking place, and it's being asked as a specific requirement in bidding and new projects for people to undertake. So I think it's happening, it's bubbling. It takes time to embed it, but the idea is that there will be kind of an official push from them. Also in line with the mayor's Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, so we understand. But yeah, working with them to push it out further.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Elaine, would you like to put your question to
Yes.
Eve?
Thank you very much for your presentation, and particularly I enjoyed hearing from Esther about her lived experience of the pilot project. My question is really about the audit to action part of the scheme. And I was interested, you showed one particular scheme that the audit had influenced. Can you tell me a story that the engagement picked up that deliberately can specifically influence the example you showed, or a different example if it's easier?
Sure. So I think there's a few things, for a specific example, we can use the Brent one because this is one of the things that we've gone to, but there's kind of other ways in terms of soft influence that it has also done. I think the Brent is a good example of where it has come into play in terms of a design perspective. I can tell you the output of that, but maybe Esther, do you want to talk a little bit about the walk that we did and kind of some of the insights the types of things that we were talking about, and then I'll talk about how it influenced.
Yeah, sure. So staying specific to Brent, when we went around, we actually realized that there were certain areas that there was no lighting at all, for example. there were certain areas where if there was an opportunity that someone would need an escape, that didn't exist. So it rose, yeah, I guess it raised more concerns in terms of how is the actual architecture and infrastructure within that area in itself. And then I believe from that, that's where some of the recent developments and findings in terms of actually using Brent as a pinnacle point has now been influencing. So yeah, those were some of the key evaluations that we saw, particularly around lighting, architecture, greenery, space, how is the cycle route, for example, and they all contributed to where the project is now.
Yeah, so following on from that, the TfL designers were on that audit with us, and the plans for that cycleway, which goes through Stonebridge Park in Wembley, have been adapted to include things like greater wayfinding. And I do understand that there might be some kind of and greenery, and then there might be some redirection of some of the traffic routes. But again, this is almost the audits are the starting point of the conversation, which then needs to inform other further conversations with wider design teams. But that is one example where this has influenced the design of a project. And then in terms of the softer powers, as I mentioned, we have in Lambeth, for example, I had a conversation with some of the police force last week, and they want to run an event for International Women's Day where they would do an audit in the local community, but it's led in partnership between the community and the police. So that's something, again, it's the tools that they're taking and they're moving forward with it and getting more people involved. So I think you have both the design perspective, but also kind of the soft community engagement as well.
Okay, just a quick question, if you would allow me, Christine. Just thinking about greenery, for example, very specifically, did you mean less greenery, lower greenery, no greenery at junctions, kind of just a little kind of nugget of a particular example?
I think the place that Esther and I were going through, it was like the greenery was like overrun. It was just awful. Like there's trash in it. It was too high, right? Like.
Yeah, there were garbage within the greenery. It's clear that it hadn't been looked at or attended to in quite a while. And then there were some areas, for example, where there was no greenery at all. So yeah, a combination of both.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Again, place specific.
Gemma, can I bring you in with your question?
Presentation, and it's a really important issue, and the scale that you're working at is really ambitious as well. Which kind of leads me into my question, because I think I totally understand and see why non-built interventions and soft power is really, really important. But I also kind of see that people might want to see sort of tangible outcomes as well. So how are you sort of capturing all of the different outcomes? And have you got anything in place where people can almost track their input and the audit activity at the beginning, how it is implementing, especially at something at a scale like this, and that takes time?
It's a great question. The audits, I mean, we finished the process like end of last summer. So I think there's still been some movements. We don't have a tool specifically to capture this, but we have been, noticing and hearing about different things that are taking place. One of the things that we want to make sure of too is that, the audits for us aren't just about that initial engagement and the community researchers doing the audits themselves. It is about those action workshops, the audit to action workshops. And those are a good example of where we highlighted the research that was taking place. We put it down into kind of these reports, and then those have been taken on and talked about and used as a conversation tool. So the Lambeth is a good example where you can track it from the initial period of doing the audits themselves, and then to the different teams within the council using it as an evidence base, and then now being used as a tool to do an audit in the community, to do an audit as part of a new design scheme, to actually there's a community neighborhood safety team that was never engaged with the council in the terms of the design and regen people, and they are now having conversations. So I hope that as time goes on, we'll see more built schemes that can directly point to the women's safety audit and say this was a really important thing that influenced the way that we've designed this place. But for now, since it's new and people are still wrapping their heads around it and using it in different ways, I think we're seeing more conversations opening up. And to us, that's the impact that we're able to kind of track and measure and know about at the moment. But I do like your idea of is there a tool that we can develop to get people to kind of maybe put some things on a map? That would be fantastic in terms of how they've used it.
I will also add on a community perspective. We were quite heavily updated with the progress of the project in itself, and I really did appreciate that because I was able to see how my direct impact has then impacted society, and then even seeing where it is at this current stage to see the progress was something that I really appreciated just from a community researcher perspective also.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustration than giving your input and then thinking nothing is happening. So I can hear that. Yeah. Christopher, can I bring you in with a question?
Thanks, Christine, and thank you both. It's a really inspiring initiative. And I think with something like this, it sounds like TfL and MOPAC have been a great client to be working with and very open-minded. But with these ambitious initiatives, there's kind of multi-stakeholder kind of involvement. And I'm keen to know if there have been any particular kind of roadblocks or issues or frustrations that you've had to overcome just to either kind of deliver these initiatives.
That's a great question. So yes, TfL and MOPAC have been wonderful in terms of really taking the stance that we want to learn through this process and explore different types of ways of doing things. One of the biggest roadblocks I would say is community safety, women's safety, everybody's safety is everybody's issue. But oftentimes we work in such siloed ways of working. So we, for example, would have lighting engineers where we know lighting is a huge issue. It comes up all the time, who have never talked to other teams in the council or the community about this specifically. And it's one thing to go through the process and do the work, but it's another thing to bring people on that journey with you and try to convince them why they need to be there. And unfortunately, still in this day and age, we did have to convince people why they needed to be there. And so you're almost undertaking the project on the one hand and then convincing people in the same way. And another big roadblock was around the kind of so what, and then this goes back to the idea of these implementations where, what now? We don't have a lot of resources and this sort of thing. And actually, we held a panel, and one of our community researchers who joined us on this panel, I printed out the quote because I thought it was fantastic. She said, she's a safety by design architect, actually, and she was also one of our community researchers. And she said, local authorities will often claim they don't have any money when it comes to issues of safety for women, but there are different regulations, actually, that illustrate that that's a bit of a hypocrisy. A woman is more likely to be killed by violence than she is falling from a height. But there is a whole work at height regulation that the councils, a local authority, have money for, and they pay someone to come in to do that. So when local authorities say they don't have money to protect women from violence, what they're really saying is that they're choosing to spend the money in ways that women are more likely to be put at risk. It's your classic default male resource allocation. And that was one of our community researchers who worked on the project, and I just thought that was fantastic. So that's another huge issue is we do this work, and now it's convincing people that it needs to be taken seriously.
Great, thank you very much.
That brings our Q&A to a close. I want to thank you both, first of all, for jumping in when we had a technical issue, and also for your presentation. And thank you, judges, for your questions.
Thank you so much.
So we're now going to travel to our project that was scheduled to go first, the Educational Engagement Program Greater London for Places for London with Barratt London, Fastned Granger, Earls Court Development Company, Helical, and Construction Youth Trust. And this is presented by Rima Hakizimana, Construction Skills Project Coordinator, and Laura Miller, Senior Construction Skills Manager, both at Places for London. So welcome both.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm sorry for the technical issue earlier.
Oh, no problem at all. We're so pleased to have you here. Laura and Rima, over to you. I'll be back in 10 minutes time.
Thank you. Perfect. So the Educational Engagement Programme is an initiative started here at Places for London with our partners at Barratt London, the Earls Court Development Company, Fastned, Helical, and Granger. Places for London is TfL's property company, and we're working to provide 20,000 homes across London, as well as 1 million square foot of office space and retail units. The Educational Engagement Programme is a way of bringing all of our partners together to invest in future talent within the built environment sector. So what is the Educational Engagement Program? So the Educational Engagement Program is a program that aims to engage with young people in secondary schools from year 7 up until year 13 and introduce them to the built environment sector. We've built this initiative because of the huge skills gap that exists within the construction industry. So we're facing the fact that 250,000 jobs are needed by 2028 to meet current construction demands. And that's paired with the fact that 30% of the construction sector is expected to retire within the next 10 years. And young people seem to have a lack of interest towards pursuing careers within the built environment sector. We commissioned a YouGov poll in 2023 that found that 35% of young people didn't even think that the built environment impacted their lives. This is despite the fact that this was contextualized within the fact that the built environment encompasses all areas of the built environment, which consists of the schools that they go to, their homes, and the roads that they travel, the roads that they travel on. Also, the built environment as a career path was very much unpopular with young women, with only 9% of young girls saying that they would pursue a career within the built environment sector, and ethnic minority people are often sidelined in this industry, with only 5.4% of the industry consisting of people from ethnic minority backgrounds. So we're aiming to challenge that through our Skills Academy. So the Skills Academy is a way of ensuring that all Londoners, regardless of backgrounds, have the means to enter the sector. So we've supported 5,000 people get jobs in the built environment sector, and supported 11,000 people gain the training that they need to be able to pursue careers in the built environment sector or upskill themselves. We found that a huge issue is the lack of awareness around career paths within the built environment sector. And therefore, we've decided to partner with 20 schools across London. Here you can see the map of all of the schools that we work with. We work with schools that are in close proximity to our development sites, and also girls' schools or schools with higher than London average free school meals and higher than London average ethnic minority background students. This is to ensure that all people are able to have equal access to opportunities within the built environment sector. We've also set up skills hubs across London, and these skills hubs allow people, regardless of age, to have training in order to allow them to be equipped to work within the built environment sector. So what have we done since the inception of our program? Since 2021, we've developed partnerships with 20 schools. We've engaged with over 17,000 young people through activities like work experience and in-school sessions, which we'll speak about a little bit later on. We've also provided 481 work experience programs, and we're proud to say that 80% of the young people who have participated in our work experience programs come from ethnic minority backgrounds. And all of our activities are brought to life by industry volunteers. So we have people from Places for London, as well as all of our joint venture partners and their supply chains, going into schools, taking part in these work experience programs, so young people have real life role models and examples of professionals within the built environment sector. We've engaged with over 1,000 volunteers, and we want to make sure that everyone that we work with is invested in our program. Therefore, we've also embedded the Educational Engagement Program in our procurement activities. So all of the organizations that we work with have a vested interest in the future of young people. We've also supported 130 young people get built environment outcomes. This consists of jobs within the built environment or pursuing further education in sectors, in subjects that are related to the built environment. So what do our initiatives look like? Our first key tenet of the Educational Engagement Program is work experience. We have 3 work experience weeks that take place throughout the academic year within school holidays and the summer holidays. And we also have 2 Building Future Skills programs, which are 3-day World of Work programs, which are supported by volunteers throughout our joint venture partners and their supply chains. Through this, we try and showcase the huge variety of careers within the built environment sector. We have soft skill sessions where students learn how to network and they learn presentation skills. We also have sessions around engineering and architecture, and then also lesser known jobs within the built environment. So things like risk management or risk management or marketing or community engagement, to make sure that the young people that we work with are well aware of the huge amounts of things that they can do if they decide to pursue a career within the built environment. We have in-school sessions and coaching sessions. We have a 2-year intensive coaching session with post-16 students, so they're able to have assisted support when it comes to thinking about how to apply for jobs, which apprenticeships are available, and things like CV workshops or interview skills are all taught through these intensive coaching sessions. We also have in-school sessions for students from year 7 to year 11, where industry professionals go into schools and have continuous sessions on things like hidden careers, so young people are aware of careers that they might not immediately associate with the built environment, and also things like pathways into carpentry or engineering, so they're aware of all of the steps that they need to take to pursue a career within these fields. As I said, one of the main focuses of our program is outcomes. So every year we host an apprenticeship evening where we get the alumni of our programs to come back into our offices. We invite year 13 students to come in, and they have Q&A sessions where they're able to explain all of the steps that they took to achieve their apprenticeships. And then we also have early careers leads from Places for London, TfL, and all of our joint venture partners, as well as their supply chains, who come in. They talk about their career, the careers that the live vacancies that they have available, so that young people are able to ask all of the questions that they might need to ask in order to make them feel confident in applying for these roles. Lastly, we make sure that we engage in the community. So this can be outside of the 20 schools that we are partnered with, and this can be things like site visits or workshops within different schools around the developments in the areas that we're working within. A key example of this would be our Play Space for Girls workshops. So we've had 3 Play Space for Girls workshops in Brent, Greenwich and Ealing, and these workshops are a chance for young women and young people in general to engage in co-design. So we found that after the age of 8, young girls are more than 4 times less likely to use outdoor play spaces. We are trying to challenge that, and we think that is completely unacceptable, and we want to make sure that all people feel included in the outdoor spaces where they live. So what we do is we have 2 workshops. In the first workshop, we have a group of students come in and we explain the fact that we are developing on a site next to their school. And as part of that site development, we're going to have outdoor spaces. We then explain to them the importance of having inclusive outdoor spaces. So making sure that young women, young girls, vulnerable people all feel safe within our outdoor spaces. So we ask them things like, what makes you feel safe outdoors? What's missing in your local area? What would you like to see in outdoor spaces within your local area? And they feed that back to us. They have a map of the site and they can label where they'd like to see more lighting, where they'd like to see more green spaces, where they'd like to see more hubs where communities can come in and speak to each other. We then take those designs and we have our landscape architects embed those designs into the site plans that we have. We then go back to the school for a second session, and those sessions are supported by Mayor Design advocates. So they teach them how to be thoughtful critics, making sure that they are aware of how to make sure that their designs are inclusive for a wide range of people within their communities. They're able to critique the designs that the landscape architects have come up with, and these designs are then taken on to be final design ideas, which will then exist within their local communities. We want to make sure that all people, regardless of their background, regardless of whether they've heard of the built environment sector before, are able to understand what we do and understand that there is a place for them within our sector. Here on the screen, you can see Martel. Martel took part in our 3-day work experience program, and he also took part in our 5-day work experience program, and has since now works for Hill Group as a site construction manager apprentice, and he came back and did a talk during our apprenticeship evening where he talked about all of the steps that he took to get to where he is. I think a key message that I want to make sure that we're all leaving with this presentation is the fact that the education engagement program is about Londoners, it's about young Londoners, and giving them the opportunity to understand that they can shape the environments around them, regardless of if they had ever even heard of what it takes to be an architect before. This program makes sure that by the end they know what they know the opportunities that are available to them. Thank you.
Hi, just making my way back to you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to invite our judges for their questions. And joining me on stage now. Excellent. Gemma, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both for the presentation. I think you've rightly identified barriers to entry for people to the built environment. And I think the benefits of participants are incredibly clear in terms of skills and that sort of career going forward. I want to understand if any of this engagement and outreach has actually influenced anything at Places for London in terms of policy or approach that you take in terms of either recruitment or procurement or design review, and whether there's an opportunity for sort of a two-way feedback and whether it's influenced anything internally.
Do you want me to take this one, Rachma? Yeah, very much so. I mean, we see our Places London Skills Academy as a core part of the place operations. You know, we not just in terms of kind of future talent, but actually the talent we need right now to help deliver our sites. So with the education engagement program, it is very much embedded then through everything that we do. And, you know, we're very grateful that we've got some fantastic volunteers, not just within Places, but across the board, who really want to get that youth voice, incorporated into everything that we're doing. I mean, we've had some really great examples of how we've been able to get young people to actually help shape what we do. The first example of actually when this program kicked off was with Barratt London and our project at Blackford View. So they were really keen to support some kind of young people within the area as part of that development. So we adopted a local school, which was Heathcote School, and then we actually created a shadow board. So there's an application process where the young people had to apply. They then we had 3 young people then appointed as a shadow board, and they were actually part of the role that they had was actually kind of go out and find out from some of the local businesses what other commercial space would actually be benefited from that local area. So using that kind of intelligence that they were gathering as shadow board members to really then help shape what the future of commercial spaces would be within that unit, but equally getting the opportunity for them to be mentored by some senior individuals within the industry, so they could kind of take that experience and go away and come back. It was such a it went so well actually that one of the ladies who was on the shadow board is now one of our degree apprentices within Places for London. So you kind of see the from very, very first engagement where we went to the school to getting them involved, getting someone even more involved from that shadow perspective, but then actually coming to work for us as a degree apprentice. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. It's about creating real outcomes. I don't think it's about just going into a school and giving a presentation which may go in one ear and out the other. We actually want to get young people into the built environment, and that's what's been so great about this project and working with the partners that we are.
And I was going to say we also I was just going to add to that. I was going to say that we also have like steering group meetings, and the young people who have taken part in our education engagement program have joined those meetings before to talk about what they enjoyed about the program, what they found especially useful, and we've taken that into consideration when thinking about the programs that we have in our next year as well.
Christopher, I was going to bring you in next.
Thank you both for your presentation, and it's a kind of great initiative. It's probably a bit of a continuation of what you've just been discussing in so far as what with the partners you've got on that you're working with, and what lessons have you learned from this initiative, and are there any conversations about kind of taking this beyond London to other areas?
Do you want to take this one, Rachma, or do you want me to take it?
Yeah, so we usually have the program in the areas that we're that we have developments in, and at Places for London, most of those areas are kind of within London. But yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm thinking about the expansion of our program.
Just to add to that though, so as part of the wider Skills Academy, we have our construction skills centres. So a lot of the information, the kind of best practice learning that we kind of develop as part of the education programme also gets weaved into our construction skills hubs, and our construction training delivery partner in London also has hubs outside of London and are working in, you know, for example, working close with West Midlands Combined Authority, in places in down with kind of nuclear builds or high speed 2 and various things. And so I do think, obviously, as part of the kind of wider governance of the Places for London Skills Academy, the lessons that we're learning are very much then shared with a partner that isn't just pan London, and that's where we can see actually some of the work that we're doing hopefully is starting to infiltrate, you know, outside of our existing remit at the moment.
Great, that's really helpful.
Elaine.
Thanks very much for your presentation. It's hugely important. I know one of the universities for landscape architects only had 10 applicants for their courses, which is very worrying for particularly landscape professions. So thank you very much. My question really is with regard to, you talked a lot about partnerships with apprenticeships. I was wondering, particularly in London, there's obviously Greenwich and Kingston that run landscape courses, and the Landscape Institute have a number of officers that kind of are actively working in this area. What kind of partnerships do you have within the landscape industry outside? Because they do also have the degree apprenticeship, but that's not the only route in.
So I mean, we are a very open programme. So anyone that kind of wants to get involved in the kind of wider Places for London Skills Academy, we are very keen on the kind of broad range of partnerships. We don't necessarily have a partnership specifically with the Land Institutes. I mean, we again, we work with a number of different providers and partners across, but we've never had something very focused on looking at the kind of place-based kind of wider area. What we have had though, again, thinking about our construction skills programme, is landscaping has been actually one of the, through our Build East hub, landscaping was one of the kind of pilot projects that we run with some local organisations around the Olympic Park area. That's something that was actually very successful, and then we were looking to see how we can roll out something similar as part of our Earls Court hub, because obviously as part of the Earls Court development there is going to be kind of significant amount of green space and community kind of areas where hopefully young people kind of really enjoy, but it hasn't been a primary focus. That's not to say that it can't be in the future.
Thank you.
Don't know if you wanted to add anything there, Rekma.
Chloe, can I bring you in with a question?
Thank you. Laura and Irma, thank you for your presentation. Again, really impressive stats and vast reach. But my question again relates to engagement. Well, I have a specific question, which is how have you engaged with neurodivergent individuals, or perhaps even young carers? Or
Chloe, your connection, yeah, we can hear you, but your connection just wobbled. Can you do your question again?
Sorry. Yes, of course. So my question is about how have you engaged with neurodivergent or SEND students, or perhaps even those who are young carers or emerging from the youth justice system. But I'm keen to hear about how you've engaged with that particular nuanced group within that group.
Do you want to neurodiverse, Rekma, and I'll do the young people from care and who may have convictions?
Yeah, so we definitely want to make sure that people who are neurodivergent have equal access to opportunities within the built environment. We do specifically try and make sure that a percentage of the young people that we work with do have special educational needs or disabilities, and we found that a lot of the time there's also barriers in terms of even like the making sure that we can keep the number of that. So some people might not like write on the application forms that they have these kind of needs, and these are things that we are actively thinking about and making sure that we are working to ensure that people feel that they are empowered to kind of declare their neurodivergent needs as well. We've also partnered with the Shaw Trust as well, and we're doing like supported internships for people who have SEND needs. So we're trying to make sure that all people we're kind of pushing to make sure that people, regardless of whether they have those neurodivergent needs or otherwise, do have those opportunities and can find career paths within the built environment sector where they can thrive with their different needs.
And then as part of our wider program, we have bespoke programs. So for example, we've what's been called our pivot program has been one specifically created to support people who are at risk of offending or already have convictions. So we've done, we ran 2 pilots last year with over 25 different individuals with convictions. And again, we do these very much in partnership with a number of different employers who have jobs, because the whole idea of what we do is that we're trying to get people into jobs. And with the additional support that we provide then through those bespoke programs, we tend to find we have much better outcomes of sustainable employment. So so from the second cohort where we learned a lot of lessons, then over 50% of those 50% of people on that program went into sustainable work in the industry. We just from some of the lessons that we learned then from the pivot pilot, we recognized that actually within the built environment there is a lot of people that are self-employed, and so we're actually just about to kick off a new program working really closely with RIF Social Enterprise, who provide a lot of support for people who have come out of prisons that may need help with tax returns and understanding how to do tax returns and various things, to actually then have not only then the training, the employer voice and kind of getting them into work, but then also the self-employment support and the support that may be needed from a tax and financial support basis to get them to work. We're also then looking at a very bespoke care leavers program. Again, through all of our programs, we have people that are care leavers, that you know, people with convictions. We have people who are homeless that very much can turn up our centres and do training with us. We don't turn anyone away, and we try to make sure that, you know, we consider a kind of very one-to-one support depending on what needs that they have. But then we recognise that because, you know, these are very much our priority groups, the reason why our program was set up was to try and help those furthest from the jobs market, those, you know, that often don't necessarily think they have a chance. We thought, well, let's do some very, very bespoke programs to make sure that the wraparound support is also there. So then we're also working with a number of different employers to look specifically at developing a care leavers program, which we're also going to be rolling out this year as well. So those very, well, we kind of see them as our targeted audiences because we think that's where we can make the biggest difference.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laura. No, that wraparound support is definitely paramount. So glad to hear about all the different things you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much both for your presentation. It's really great to hear about this program, and thank you, judges, for your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're now going to hear from Right to the City in the City of London for the City of London Corporation with Publica. And this next presentation is with Gaia Crocella, who is Senior Design Researcher, and Ellie Cosgrave, who is Director of CIC and Research, both from Publica. And here you are. We just have you, Ellie, in the corner, interestingly, but here we go, it's moving. Excellent.
That was our tech excluding Gaia.
Fantastic. Well, very smoothly done. And I can hear you both and see your presentation. So I'll see you back in 10 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today, we are sharing the journey, impact, and future plans for Right to the City, a participatory research project that brought together more than 300 women, girls, and non-binary people to reimagine the City of London as a place of care, empowerment, and belonging. This self-funded initiative was an opportunity to listen to their lived experience, to foreground their voices, which are so often unheard, and to co-develop a programme that will transform how organisations and institutions across the City of London address gender inclusion and safety. There were 3 key motivations behind this work. Firstly, to support the City of London Police in their ambition to be one of the most inclusive police services in the country. Secondly, because of the city's unique demographics. It is a global destination, welcoming millions of visitors every year, but one of London's least populated areas, with a majority male workforce aged 25 to 64. This makes many parts of the city either empty at night or populated with groups of male street drinkers. Thirdly and finally, although there are low levels of reported crime in the City of London, women consistently describe a gap between feeling safe from crime and actually feeling and experience safety. Those responsible for women and girls' safety in the City of London acknowledge that violence against women and girls is a hidden phenomenon, one that is underreported and poorly understood. And this is in part because of its transient population. Therefore, the Right to the City aimed to bridge this gap between data and lived experiences. Operating across 5 wards, our aim was to create a shared, community-driven vision for women's safety in the City of London. We focused on 3 things. Firstly, understanding the nature of women's fear, whether they're residents, workers, or visitors. Secondly, to develop a citywide strategy and approach to address women's feeling of safety. And thirdly, helping City of London stakeholders to understand their role and practical actions they can take to deliver against the strategy and work together towards long-term change.
The project was really shaped through 3 key strands of work: the artist-led night walks, the Youth Design Challenge, and the final celebration event, which are all grounded in a feminist philosophy of participation, really that helped us redefine safety, not simply as the absence of harm, but as the presence of joy, belonging, and agency. And so by foregrounding lived experiences through creative approaches, we were able to move beyond technical statistics and data and actually uncover the emotional, sensorial, or sensory and cultural dimension of safety. So throughout March 2025, we hosted a weekly night walks, bringing together women, girls, and non-binary people aged 21 to 65. Using sound, light, movement, poetry, mask making, and performance, we really explored how to take up space in the city after dark and actually transforming dark corners of the city into spaces of joyful reclamation. We engaged with a total of 48 participants across the month, including workers, nighttime workers, residents, students, and visitors, prioritizing participation of underrepresented communities and groups through sign-up forms. The walks were particularly important because they fostered such intimate and yet collective moments of reflection, exploring both key challenges in the city, as well as opportunities that could help us unlock safer, more active and joyful lives in the city. And so in this way, the walks were not just formative, but transformative, where participants told us that the workshop made them much more aware of the feelings and memories they carried in the body, really highlighting how the importance of perception of safety, of which really the body is the first threshold, the first site of the lived experience, which carries past memories across every corner of the city and dictating what streets we take and how we move through the city itself. Yet many people told us that the city now belongs to me. I feel that more deeply, or I was suddenly able to close my eyes. I did not need to be vigilant anymore. And again, these quotes really highlight the power of creative methodologies in really generating belonging, allyship, and a new sense of power, allowing really to let go of vigilance and at the same time create new memories of place. Another key kind of insight that came out amongst many others was the need to stop memorializing Jack the Ripper in Portsoken and in the area around Aldgate. And this really was very important because women started to question how dominating narratives overshadow stories of women positive contribution in the city. And therefore, who is memorialized and who do we want to celebrate in the city? So in this sense, public art was really seen as a powerful tool to understand how women have really occupied spaces in the past and contributed to the development of the city and how they may have the power to continue to do so. In parallel to this, the Youth Design Challenge engaged over 239 young women, girls, and non-binary youth aged 11 to 24. And really they worked through collage and poster artwork making, that helped them reimagine the city as a place built for them. They called for places where they feel seen and heard, where green infrastructure is at the core, where rest and play are possible, where color speaks to their identity, and where community life is visible and alive. They named Bobo Cafe in Aldgate as one of the rare examples where they really feel catered for. And they highlighted the need for more of such places. So we decided to bring this poem from a 16-year-old participant, which also was one of the winners of the challenge, who says that reimagining an alleyway is reimagining a feeling. Looking down a dark alleyway, feeling eerie and too uncomfortable to go down, should not be the direction in my commute. This alleyway reflects hope and a feeling of curiosity to explore the streets that engulf us. I want my streets to reflect me, to reflect my hope, joy, and what I stand for. If I am to be a product of my environment, let it be a happy place, a green place, a welcoming space. Where there is a light at the end of the tunnel, let the tunnel be part of the light, part of the journey that inspires and fulfills me. My streets are me, and I'm proud of myself as a light that wants to be found and not dreaded. So to us, this poem really captures the essence of the project and its impact. And it also highlights how both through the Women Nightwalks and the Youth Design Challenge, together as a collective, we were able to rewrite the history of the places we engaged with, creating new empowering memories of those very places that can now be carried forward by the very people who took part in the program.
Thanks, Gaia. So across all of the strands, the Right to the City engaged 327 participants alongside a wide variety, a citywide network of 41 organisations and collaborators, including an advisory board that met throughout the project and will continue to shape its legacy. Our work resulted in the co-creation of 17 practical actions that can be taken to increase women's sense of safety and belonging in the City of London. This acknowledges that there is no silver bullet solution and that a systemic change requires systemic action. A bit of a highlight of some of the recommendations that we made in terms of behaviour change, in terms of community groups and individuals. We recommended harnessing the energy of women in businesses and creating a women's safety champions network across businesses in terms of the physical environment, working with the amazing young women who are, as you see, incredibly capable and inspired and know what spaces they want to create interventions around lighting, wayfinding, and restful green spaces across the city. In terms of policy and organisations, Gudrun, who's the head of planning in the City of London, has been on the board throughout and has committed to doing an audit and review of the City Plan 2024, as well as ensuring that there are a wide variety of policy and planning actions that they can take forward in the long term. In terms of cultural norms and transforming spaces, recommendations around public art, murals, memorials, and co-design, making sure that these are co-designed with community. Right to the City has generated far more impact and interest than we could ever have dreamed of 18 months ago when we started this project, with cities, with the city's offices, communities, businesses, and institutions all wanting to stay involved. We have recently found out that we have follow-on funding and we will be applying again for multi-year funding to ensure that this becomes an embedded and sustained piece of work. But initially, this work will ensure that we can continue facilitating conversations through night walks and looking at how that changes over time, building on the Youth Design Challenge for actual, tangible, transformative projects in the City of London, bring together benchmarking and measuring so that we can showcase what happens when you centre women's experience. And finally, to ensure that we have a strengthened governance and organisation, that this becomes sustainable beyond our lifetime into ensuring that all of the City of London is enabled by these insights and can work together towards a common vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and what amazing findings, and really love that poem. I'm going to welcome our judges back. I'm sure they have questions of their own to share. Just as they arrive here. There we go. So Christopher, would you like to put the first question?
Thank you both. Really inspiring kind of initiative, and great to see such a kind of creative process that you've followed. I think we've heard a lot in a lot of presentations today about kind of some early easy wins. Are there in particular that kind of jumped out to you through this process that could be brought forward?
Sorry,
Go
I'll jump
on.
on. Yeah, so I think the I don't know if you can call it an easy win, but certainly an easy action that the City of London has jumped on and said we can already start doing this, is training in understanding what is the nature of violence, what is the nature of women's fear, and to be able to make sure that we move away from an understanding that safety can be achieved in the public realm through CCTV lighting in towards a much more broad understanding of belonging, connection to one another, accessibility of spaces. And so we've already trained the Violence Against Women and Girls team at the City of London Police, as well as the City of London. And they have now asked to be part, when we went to follow on funding, they said, yes, we will fund you, but we want more people to be involved across the City of London. So now the parks team, the schools team, and many others have kind of asked to be part of that strategy making process. So this has been about, it's been a story of transitioning from one understanding of how we do safety, some defensiveness, I hope they won't mind me saying, about City of London is a safe place, moving from crime to a space of belonging. So I don't know if that's an easy win, but it is certainly a first step we can take very simply, and that's elevating women's voices into spaces that they are often seen as marginal or have been actively marginalized.
Yes, and just to follow on from these, actually the City of London has really then asked us to help them embed the actions that we raised through the recommendations into actually their programs long term. And at the same time, I would say another win is, well, firstly, I think the first biggest win is actually witnessing the experiences of these women, girls, and non-binary people who actually took part in the program, already saying how much the program meant to them in terms of actually starting to feeling a sense of power, to start feeling safe. And I think that is one of the biggest win. Then I guess another one to follow on what Ellie was saying is also the business improvement districts have asked us to kind of share the learning, and actually we've done it with the main core bids in the City of London, but now they've asked us as part of the follow-on stage of the work to actually share the learnings and therefore training with all of the core businesses in the City of London. So that's, I think, a wonderful step forward and win, considering the demographics and the nature of the place in which we are practicing.
Amazing, thank you.
Feels like a significant win to have people hungry to be educated on this subject. So congratulations. Elaine, can I bring you in?
Yes, thanks very much for your presentation. I really feel like you're doing very important work, and I haven't seen a project frame and explore these really kind of very deep issues behind women's safety before. My main question really is about your trauma-informed approach, because you're dealing with body remembered feelings, and there is a huge potential to activate past trauma within your work. And I really, really want to understand how you maintain the safety of your participants so that they can give their experiences in a very productive and useful way, but sort of looking after their own well-being.
Elaine, thank you so much for a really important question. And of course, it's something that is absolutely at the central part of our work. I run an organisation called the My Body Back Project that works with survivors of sexual harm to, again, use creative processes to re-engage, reconnect with their body after violence. And through that work, I've done quite a lot of work with psychotherapists and in group settings about the ways in which you can start to manage those spaces. A key aspect is to firstly inform people what the nature of the conversations will be at the outset, so that people are coming aware that this is part of what they will be talking about. Second is to make absolutely clear that this is not a space where we require or expect people to share their experience of harm, especially where that is traumatic. They may choose that they want to, but this is not a space where they have to share anything that they're uncomfortable with, anything about their own experiences. It's an invitation to explore together. Having said that, it's very clear that they might come up. Sometimes people share more than they expected to share and can suddenly find themselves feeling a little uncomfortable, where we make sure that that there's always at least two spare people that are not required to be running the workshop. These are people who are active participants, but that are also trained in the impact of trauma and sexual harm, so that they are ready to be able to just say, oh, we don't have to be talking about this. Would you like a cup of tea? Did you notice that how much it's raining? Or, just changing the atmosphere. And also letting people know what those safety precautions are that we're taking. And finally, I have some issues around when you just announce at the beginning, well, if you're feeling unsafe, there's this spot that you can go to, because it asks people to kind of out themselves if they do go and use that space in terms of so can be quite exposing. So people are left not feeling able to leave. So just welcoming people that, if you're uncomfortable, a bit hungry, you can just go over there. It doesn't have to be you're massively triggered. And so these they're the kind of main ways that we think about it.
Yeah. Thank you. You made me feel very emotional with the thoroughness of your answer and the fact that you've really looked after the well-being of your participants.
Thank you.
Yeah, hugely important work, and one that is left too often out of community engagement. So really great to hear. Chloe, do you have a question for the team?
Yes. So bouncing off Elaine's point, I absolutely love the interdisciplinary nature of the project, how you merge arts and culture with psychology. My question again, it kind of speaks to the key learnings, or rather actually, was there anything surprising or unanticipated that emerged from the project? There you go. That's my 2 cents.
I'll let you do some of the key findings, but maybe
go, and then I'll jump in.
I don't know how unanticipated it is, because we've done this before and it always comes up. But just to underline how much joy and fun and silliness and play you can achieve with great direct insights and outcomes, as well as really tackling issues that have made people feel powerless and have made people feel excluded. That actually there are ways of engaging with this topic that make people feel big and joyful, and that we just have a lot of fun is maybe something you wouldn't expect to be having when you're talking about this kind of really often very severe harm.
Yeah, I would say that some of the kind of key findings, I mean, there were plenty of key findings across this work, but actually what was quite surprising was that because of the demographics of the city and the area we're working in, of course, many of the women we engaged with and took part in the process shared that they actually, some of the places that we discovered and explored together as a collective in the night, they didn't even know they existed. They didn't know, despite being workers in the city, walking every day to and from work, they didn't know of the existence of these beautiful niches and spaces and courts, which in the nature of the typology, the urban typology of the City of London, are spaces that are often not explored if you don't consciously kind of look for them. And so they kind of mentioned the freedom and the power they gained by acknowledging the built environment and the spaces that kind of surrounded them. And these included kind of small hidden courts, but it also included the presence of water and fountains, so by the Barbican, or in some of these kind of hidden courts in Cornhill specifically, there were these courtyards that were suddenly like hidden gems. And suddenly that connection to these places was almost an epiphany and made them feel much more empowered. The presence of water again, but also the call for green spaces and green infrastructure, how important that was, and the need to let them be in those places and feel free to be in and dwell in those places also after dark. So the ability to let go of vigilance was a really incredible finding. The power that they gained from the ability to close their eyes was really, yeah, incredible to witness and hear.
Just add one thing, which was when we were with torches making shadows on the alleyways in Portsoken, that we were kind of, dancing, being cute, big and small and playing around. What was surprising was the power reversal as men walked through these alleyways and stopped and said, "Am I allowed to be here?" Didn't say, they said with their bodies, kind of, "Oh, I'm apologized," and got small and walked around us. Now, obviously, we don't want people, men feeling small, but there is an interesting, immediately embodied experience of when you shift something about the urban environment, when something new happens, power can shift immediately. So we have the power to make that change. And we can continue to play.
And actually what was interesting was also that finally people felt heard, participants felt heard, and they felt like they were not alone anymore. And so connecting to what Ellie was just saying, the feeling of power came from this feeling of allyship and being together in the same situation and knowing that I'm not alone in my feeling of feeling unsafe, and that we together can have power to take up space, even in the night, in a city like, in a place like the City. And yeah, there are many other of these anecdotes and surprising kind of insights, but it was really beautiful to be able to, and humbling to be able to witness this as part of the work. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for that insight. Thank you.
I love that. Power can shift immediately. Gemma, can I bring you in?
Yes, and thank you both. And yeah, likewise, what a fantastic poem, what fantastic sort of anecdotes from everyone. I really hope you can mobilize that feeling that you've been successfully sort of conjured up. I was just going to ask with the partnership working, because and I've probably built on the answer you've just given, really, the power dynamic in those rooms is very different. The makeup of the people in that room is going to be very different to what you're doing in such a creative and engaging way. Your role is actually probably very important in translating that, and that the feedback loop goes one way and it also comes back the other way. So just ask you to sort of expand on how you're navigating that, really, and making sure the right people are in the room engaging.
Mm-hmm. So that was Gaia's role, was to wrangle these people on the main board. So I'll let you talk about that. But I will just say kind of briefly that the police were really keen to come on the walks with us, and we decided that it was not appropriate, especially for them to come in their position as police, because of the existing relationships and perspectives around and experiences people have of police. That is not to say that the police have not been very inspired themselves as women, and that we try to make sure that we don't have like one way of engaging with the community and another way of engaging with so-called professionals, because we believe very strongly that we're all human beings with passions, and we will all be inspired when we really connect with what it is that we're here to do together. But I'll let you talk a bit more about the sort of technical part of
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to be brief, so I'm going to let you answer. But
yes, super brief. So the network of collaborators actually really brought together policymakers and kind of policy partners, which had this London-wide and city-based influence, but at the same time, it was super important to have community connectors in the room and actually cultural collaborators along with community groups as part of the advisory board, which could provide us with the local intelligence, let's say, of the community needs. And so bridging the gap and working across scales for us was super important and fundamental, and making sure that those cultural collaborators were also part of the room, as well as the community groups. A key presence in the advisory board and in the network of collaborators was Arshita Patel, which was actually, well, she's a local resident, but also a SEND expert. And she is particularly embedded in the community and was the community connector that made sure that we could bring in and connect to the local community groups that were most affected by this issue predominantly. And she was constantly also kind of revising our language and critically critically feedbacking onto the process. So she came along with us to ensure that that balance between the bigger scale of action and the ground movement or bottom-up movement was really coming together in the middle, in the center. Thank you.
Okay, we'll leave that there, but thank you very much for your presentation, and judges for your questions. So we need to travel now. We're going to make our way to Dewsbury, our future Dewsbury public engagement for the Dewsbury Neighbourhood Board with Counter Context and Kirklees Council. And this is presented by John Prendergast, Account Manager, Counter Context, and David Wildman, who is Executive Director for Place at Kirklees. Welcome, John.
Hi, afternoon, everyone.
I can hear you, but your camera just flickered for a moment, but you seem...
Brilliant, and hopefully joined by David Wildman. I'm not sure if he's having a connection problem. I've just seen him on the backstage.
I think he's on his way. Here he comes.
Afternoon. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so afternoon. My name's John Prendergast. I work for a company called Counter Context. We're a specialist communications and engagement agency based out of Sheffield. I'll let David introduce himself.
Afternoon, David Wildman, the Director for Regeneration at Kirklees Council.
Brilliant. And we're just going to tell you a little bit about our future Dewsbury engagement that took place in 2024 and early 2025 in Dewsbury. So just to kick us off, I'm going to throw over to David just to give a bit of background on Dewsbury as a town and its strategic importance to the area.
Yeah, thanks. So Dewsbury, if you don't know, it's a proud historic market town of around 63,000 people, and it's located in the heart of West Yorkshire. It was shaped by a Victorian era textiles heritage, and it's still defined today by some amazing architecture and a great range of communities. But like many former manufacturing towns, it's faced decades of decline, higher deprivation, lower skills, and a town centre that's struggled with vacancy, reduced footfall, and a sense of being a bit tired and losing its sense of purpose. But today, Dewsbury is at a turning point. So there's major investment underway, reviving the historic arcade and the market, delivering a new town park, modernising the bus station, also supported by a wider investment programme like TransPennine route upgrade, which strengthens the town's connectivity and future growth potential. So what we're seeing is a town that's beginning to re-emerge, but the regeneration isn't just about buildings. It's about rebuilding confidence, improving spaces for people, and giving people more reasons to live, work, learn, and visit the area. And the next chapter for Dewsbury is about creating a town that is vibrant, is welcoming, and is full of potential. And what John's going to do is talk through how we're putting the community at the heart of shaping that change and where we go next.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. So, as David said, a lot of targeted regeneration has started to take place in Dewsbury over the last decade. And over the last 6-7 years, that has been supported and directed by the Dewsbury Neighbourhood Board. So the Neighbourhood Board was formed in 2019 as part of the then government's town improvement plan. It's a group of leaders in Dewsbury drawn from the town's business, public service and charity sectors. And they have the sort of overall goal of supporting Dewsbury's regeneration through increasing activity in the town centre, improving accessibility for everyone, and boosting the attractiveness of the town's buildings and public spaces. So their first major undertaking was in 2020-2021, where they put together the Dewsbury Blueprint and the Town Improvement Plan. They were informed by an engagement called Our Town Dewsbury, which took place at the end of 2020. A couple of years later, in 2024, the second phase of this project was launched nationally, which was called the Long-Term Plan for Towns. So at that point, the Kirklees Council and the Neighbourhood Board together were required to produce a sort of 10-year investment plan for Dewsbury. And a key part of the funding being made available for that plan was to be able to evidence that it accurately reflected the priorities of the public within the town. So in 2024, around April, we launched our Future Dewsbury engagement. And a key part of that engagement, really, we wanted to do three things. Obviously, there was the ability to understand the public's priorities and inform the long-term plan. But at the same time, we wanted to build up a sense of continuity between that 2020 work and the projects that were already starting to come forward, and the work that was being done by the Neighbourhood Board and Kirklees Council, build up sort of trust and understanding around why and how that work was taking place and how people would be kept involved throughout that process. So really that meant some of our key focuses for this engagement were visibility of the engagement itself, making sure we got out in front of as many people as possible, specifically seeking out some of those seldom heard groups and removing as many barriers to participation as possible. So I'm going to talk through today just a couple of the ways that we tried to do that. The first of those was our approach to sort of public drop-in events. So I'll just wait for my slides to catch up. There we go. We held 7 drop-in events spread around the summer around Dewsbury with accessibility and visibility for those prioritised. So we co-located every single one of those events with other kind of community events that were going on in Dewsbury, trying to sort of embed ourselves in the normal flow of community life around the town. So we set ourselves up at things like the Come On Youall Family Fun Day, which is held in a playing field every year in the town. We worked with a sort of local masjid to speak to people entering and leaving Friday prayers. We went to live music events at the West Ridings pub. We even pitched up outside Big Asda one Saturday morning to get people as they were doing their weekly shop and have a chat to them. So this really helped us kind of get the message out and hear back from a very wide range of people across a different mix of age groups, ethnicities, and economic backgrounds. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Another way that we sort of look to embed ourselves in the community in Dewsbury was through our local engagement officers. So for me, these guys really were the stars of the show. It was Gulzar Bouasti and Yamin Ayoub. And these, they were both hired at the very beginning of the process on a temporary basis on the real living wage. They're both Dewsbury residents who were well embedded in the town's communities and had a really granular understanding of those communities and the different challenges that they faced. So they were able to act as a kind of critical friend when we were initially kind of putting some of the messaging together and shaping the questions that we were going to ask people. But also they really boosted the project on the ground in 2 key ways. One of those was by being members of the community, they were obviously able to work and build up trust among various groups in the towns. One of the ways they did that was through local and sort of neighborhood WhatsApp groups, so family WhatsApp groups and things like that. Yamin came up to me one day, he said, I've posted in these groups, I've got it in front of all the aunties for you. And so they were really able to spread that message within the community in a way that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise without that community connection. And secondly, both of them are fluent in Urdu, which meant that Dewsbury is a very diverse town, and it meant for people who maybe weren't as confident in engaging with us in English, they were able to feedback, very in depth in Urdu, and then we were able to translate that for the final report. So for some more of those in-depth discussions, we also held a series of workshops, which were all targeted at sort of different groups in the town. And we tried to group people by interest, but also bring together sort of disparate groups of people from different backgrounds. So I think a good example of where this worked really well was our housing workshop. So we wanted to get people's thoughts on the housing situation in Dewsbury and the different ways that we could offer safe, affordable, secure housing to people in the future. Within that workshop, we had everyone from sort of property developers and landlords in the town that were looking to renovate and improve the buildings they own, people that worked with local homelessness charities, people that worked helping get young people into safe and secure housing. And although not everybody agreed on everything and there were sort of different priorities, we were able to bring out some really active and sort of engaged conversations between those people and sort of share those different viewpoints around so that people could hear from each other as they were sort of thinking about what they wanted the future of their town to look like. To ensure that we heard from young people, we also held two sort of workshops with Dewsbury College and a workshop with the University of Huddersfield. And those were fantastic, sort of hearing from students about their concerns in the town, about the ways that, the areas that they felt unsafe, some of the challenges that they'd faced, and the kind of town they wanted to live in going forward. And we really heard from people about the sort of the opportunities and the skills and the development that they wanted to see in Dewsbury that would make them think of it as a place that they wanted to stay and grow up and raise a family. So in terms of the feedback we gathered, we tried to maximize the number of ways in which people could feedback to us. So we had a short feedback form, for example, which was a sort of, if you've only got 5 minutes, here are the key things we'd like to hear your opinions on. We had longer feedback forms for people that wanted to give a bit more detail. We set up collection points for those forms around the town, as well as a free post address. So people could drop them off at the library or the town hall, and really tried to maximize the ways that people could participate both online and offline. This resulted in formal feedback, so completed forms from more than 1 in 100 people in the total Dewsbury population, plus hundreds more sort of face-to-face conversations that we had throughout that engagement. In particular, we saw the participation from ethnic minority communities almost triple from previous engagements that had been done in Dewsbury. So the Our Town Dewsbury engagement that I mentioned earlier, that received about 10% responses from people that identified as non-white. We received about 27% for Our Fruits Dewsbury. And those responses were also from a mix of people from different ages and genders. So we were able to be quite confident that our feedback was representative of people in the town. And in terms of the impacts that have happened since this engagement ended about a year ago, the first and sort of the most direct, I think, was that the Dewsbury Long-Term Plan was submitted at the end of last year to MHCLG, who have approved the plan, which means that this 20 million of additional funding for Dewsbury will now be available. I think it was approved last month. So that'll be start coming forward to the town from 2027. But on a more human level, I think we were able to boost knowledge of the neighbourhood board and the work that they're doing with Kirklees Council, the work that the council are doing to regenerate the town. I think this has been evidenced by the fact that the board get a lot more public interest in their meetings now than they did a couple of years ago. There's a lot of comments and people that will show up to those meetings and provide that sort of feedback and scrutiny in an ongoing way for them. Similarly, there was feedback received during this consultation that was a little bit outside the scope of the project, but which Kirklees Council have worked to bring forward solutions to the things that people were concerned about. So, for example, there's new initiatives to support Dewsbury's high street businesses and to tackle antisocial behaviour around the town centre, working with West Yorkshire Police. And I think most importantly, we were able to sort of start this conversation really in Dewsbury, which will continue over the next decade. The town board have been very responsive and continue to engage with the local community through a variety of channels. And hopefully starting to build up a sense in Dewsbury that local communities there are listened to, that they are valued, and that they do have some control over their future. Thanks very much.
Beautifully done, well to time. And I'm going to welcome our judges to the stage now to ask some questions about your work in Dewsbury. And here they come. Gemma, it would be great to start with you on this one.
Oh, thank you both for presentation and great ambition for the project as well. One of the things I wanted to ask was, you have the sort of £20 million funding for Dewsbury, and you've got all this feedback from residents. And I just wondered, what did the sorting and sifting process look like in terms of how that got spent? So how did feedback from people interface with budgets and planning and program, and you came to a decision on how that's all going to be allocated? And were you communicating these constraints to people when the feedback was given? And is there a way to engage with it?
Absolutely, and it's certainly something that we tried to communicate through this engagement, that obviously regeneration is a long-term process, and that when government money is funding projects like this, there are always constraints around how that can be used. So I think one of the key examples of that was Dewsbury had a sports centre that was recently closed down, and we heard from a lot of people that they wanted to reopen that sports centre and to be able to use that facility again. Now, because of where the red line boundary is drawn on this project, that wasn't possible for use for this pot of funding. But because of the feedback that's been received, Kirklees Council have been working in the area to provide those sporting facilities and to bring new sports programs back into the town for people. So where it wasn't always possible for this pot of sort of £20 million to support a specific kind of priority or piece of feedback, a lot of work has gone into looking at other ways that those things can be supported.
Shall I just add to that? I think just to pick up your question, Jim, I suppose about how we worked out what the £20 million was going to be spent on, and I suppose how the public's input shaped that. So the funding that came out had a set of interventions that were considered on menu. So that was our kind of starting point, and we used, I suppose, lots of evidence and previous engagement to say, right, okay, based on what we already know and where we know the pressures are, these are the areas that probably need funding. And then we, so that was a kind of an internal technical council and then board member kind of series of workshops. So we brought in, I suppose, technical people to review where could the funding go. And then what we were doing in parallel was the engagement that was taking place with local people, saying what's important to you, what is the most important things that you want to see change. And the same theme came out across the board, which was about safety. It was about bringing buildings back into use. And then what we did was we used the top, I suppose it's effectively the top 5 priorities that came out of the community engagement to say these are going to be the areas that get the most amount of funding through the program. So the 2 biggest things were buildings and safety. So most of the revenue funding is going into setting up a new kind of multidisciplinary safety team, because that's what people kept saying. This is a lot of people don't feel safe in the town. So we want to change that. The other thing was there's so many beautiful buildings, but they're not in use. So the biggest amount of capital funding will be going into bringing those buildings back into use. So there's a direct link between what people told us mattered to them and where the funding's going. And then that kind of went in a loop of background, the board and workshops, and effectively the same. Everybody agreed with what the priorities were, which is not always the case. So that's how that was the kind of process we went through, was evidence plus community to get us to the how we then shared the money out.
Thank you very much.
Chloe, can I bring you in?
Yes, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, David and John, for the presentation. Your local engagement officers, I'm keen to hear about what they've gained from the project, but could you walk me through one of their stories? I saw 2 representatives on your PowerPoint slide, but could you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, quite happily. So Gulzeb was, I really enjoyed working with Gulzeb, and I hoped she'd actually be able to join us today, but unfortunately she wasn't available because she's now moved on to a different job. Gulzeb had lived in Dewsbury sort of all her life. She had a family. She had children that ranged from, I think the youngest was around 8 years old when we worked together, and her eldest son was about 22. So she really was somebody that had spent her kind of life embedded in this community, and a lot of the work that she'd done that kind of shone through to us during that initial hiring process had been community-based. So she'd been, for example, an at-home carer in the past, and really was very, very used to, I think, having kind of honest and sensitive face-to-face conversations with a wide variety of people. And so really that's why when we were hiring for those roles, Gul in particular kind of really stood out to us. I know that since the engagement, she does still live in Dewsbury. She rang me up to ask for a reference about 6 months ago. I know that, I think she now works back in the care sector because that sort of community care is always something that she's been very passionate about. So yeah, I think both Gul and Yamin, it was really, really positive to sort of to work with them. But Gul in particular was somebody who I think had spent her life in Dewsbury, continues to spend her life in Dewsbury, and it was her sort of passion and sensitivity and care that really made her sort of stand out to me throughout the engagement.
Yeah, thank you, John.
We just really quickly add something, Chloe, from my point of view. So my portfolio includes, as well as regeneration, includes skills and our employment skills team. And I'm really trying to push this, that we need to embed skills and employment as a core part of major regeneration. Sometimes it's not thought of as core part of our major regeneration. So I'm trying to, and this was a great example of how can we give local people an opportunity to develop skills, but at the same time as I suppose building trust and removing some of the barriers that quite often happens in community engagement and consultation. So I saw this as like a mutually beneficial opportunity. So from our point of view, it helped remove barriers. It meant that Gul and Yamin could build trust with the local community. They could have more meaningful conversations. They understand the nuances that a local community and how to engage with them. But at the same time, they were gaining skills that then supported them to go on and get new jobs. And I think that local input, because I've tried it a few times and it's not always landed. The idea has always raised questions. So when I first put this to the board, they were a bit like, well, why are we doing that? And when afterwards, it was this was the best bit about the way we did it. So it's helped change, I think, people's understanding of maybe a more positive and proactive way of engaging in communities where sometimes it's more difficult to reach certain parts of the community. So and it's definitely something we'll be doing on other council-led engagement programs as well to bring that skills piece in. So
fabulous.
Christopher, can I bring you in?
Thank you both for your presentation, and it really seems you've kind of gone deep into the community and fully engaged. I think I will kind of end. My last question will be the same as my first, in so much as were there any surprise outcomes from the process that you got you scratching your head?
Do you want to come in on that one first, David? Or
you go for it, John. Give your view, and then I'll give mine.
I think there was, in a positive sense, I was very surprised by the sort of level of ambition and opportunity within Dewsbury. I mean, people in Dewsbury, as we sort of said earlier, I think that there's been a very palpable sense of decline in the town over the past 20 years, but in a very sort of traditionally West Yorkshire way, I think there's a real, not naive, but a real sort of optimistic view for the future and sort of what can be done when communities kind of pull together and when investment happens in the right place. The flip side of that, one of the things that stood out to me, in particularly in the sort of middle parts of this engagement, were some of the hostility that we received around, for example, diversity in the town. And I actually found it quite shocking what some people were willing to say to us around, changes in demographics that had happened in Dewsbury or how they felt about the town. And one of the difficult elements for anyone working in local government at the moment is balancing the sort of needs of different communities. Kirklees across the board is a very, very diverse place, and Dewsbury really is somewhere. It's been very, very diverse for a long time, and lots of these communities are very kind of close, used to living kind of close by neighbours of all sorts of different ethnicities, and so. Yeah, I was very pleased to see the level of passion and optimism that people had for the town, but at the same time, I was quite shocked by some of the sort of less positive things people were willing to say about their neighbours.
Yep.
Elaine. You know, I'm just going to let David. I'll just let Elaine ask a question, and then maybe you can add that thought.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
I used to live in Kirklees about 15 years ago, and I remember kind of past engagements, and particularly, and I also remember that hostility that you've just spoken to being one of my kind of the more kind of shocking kind of aspects of it. But the one of the positive thing that I remember was about kind of looking at the empty shop schemes and trying to get businesses back into the town centre. And you've also kind of mentioned that kind of aspiration at the moment. So I'm kind of quite keen to hear kind of how it's progressed, that particular element has progressed, and where you kind of how much success you've had.
Yeah, so really brief, just to link, I suppose, thank you for the question, Elaine, and great that you still live here. Shame you don't still live here. Yeah, I think just one of the things that was most stark for me, in terms of coming back to Christopher's questions about something that was a surprise, was maybe all the points John's made, but it was also maybe just some of the honesty that came out in terms of some of the realities of that local people are facing. So the teams went in and did some sessions within some of the junior schools and the primary schools, and some of the realities of of kids saying, I see people taking drugs on the street. And it was a real reminder to me, like you work in a world where it's about regeneration and, building shiny things and trying to bring places back into use sometimes. But actually, it was a real reminder back to the grounding of just how important really good engagement is, and maybe doing some of the basics of how we engage with local people and how we need to activate spaces to make it safer for everybody. So it was that surprised me how honest and genuine some of the feedback was, and actually like how eye-opening it was in terms of actually some of these issues that maybe I've got son that's 7. I'd be very surprised if I heard if I asked him what he thought about where we live, which is in Kirklees. It would shock me to hear him say that. So I think that was really eye-opening, and then linking that to making a change. So in Dewsbury specifically, there's a number of businesses that were empty buildings. The ground floor or upper floors were completely empty. The ground floors were either probably on a route to be closed, to be honest, Elaine. And there was a mixture of funding that was council and town improvement plan, and then support from Historic England as well, which was how do we improve the quality of so protecting a heritage asset. How do we at the same time then bring back a building into complete use? And repurpose at the same time. So there's a couple of examples in the centre of Dewsbury where the ground floor was kind of a big office type environment that was not needed. They were going to close down. Actually, what they did was we reworked that building into smaller office, created a cafe space next door, and then upstairs was converted into good quality residential. So there's been a series of those programs that have worked well. And then what's fed into, coming back to Gemma's question about, well, how do we work out where to spend some of the money? Those successes of things that have worked have then fed into what we're going to do more of, and where we've learned lessons of things that have maybe not worked as well, we're going to do less of. But so there's definitely a bringing businesses back in. We've got business advisors in. One of the spin-offs that happened as a result of the engagement is a new business network. So that business network is now meeting and talking about how do they work. And one of the things I think that the engagement's done in this project is doing is realize it is helping the board and local people realize that they can do more, that they don't need to wait for the council. So sometimes councils need to get out of the way and support people to do stuff as well as doing it. So some of the spin-offs, and come back to Chris's question about surprises, some of that's helped actually, is the things that maybe we weren't specifically asking for in this. have happened. So the kind of creation of a business network and other bits has been a real positive. So that's helping to bring some of the businesses back into use. And the arcade, if you're not aware of the Dewsbury Arcade, an amazing, beautiful building, been shut for years, is about to become the first community-owned arcade and will open in a couple of months' time. And that will be bringing back, something that will be a real, a gem in Dewsbury's in Dewsbury when it opens in a couple of months' time, and that will be full of local independent businesses. So yeah, really starting to see that change, which is why I use that phrase that I think we're a bit of a turning point in Dewsbury. We need to keep that going, and the community engagement work has really underpinned how we make sure that the community and local people are genuinely part of the change. It's not just we're consulting people and saying, what do you think? It's saying, how are you part of shaping the future of Dewsbury? And that's why our Future Dewsbury name was chosen, because it's about all of us working together.
Well, that is a lovely note on which to leave it. So I just want to thank you both for your presentations and judges for your questions. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So this concludes actually the full category of community engagement. It's now time for the judges to retire backstage and make their deliberations. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being with us at the Pineapples. We've got lots more on other stages. The schedule button is your best guide, and everything is recorded and available to play back. We'll see you again soon.